Why is it that some women walk into a man's life and become unforgettable, while others fade like background noise? Why do some women leave a mark so deep that he replays their voice, their energy, their presence over and over, while others are forgotten before the text thread ends? Most women have been taught the wrong approach. We've been taught to be nice, be available, be low maintenance. We've been taught to prove our worth instead of embody it. And maybe you've followed that advice. Maybe you've given more, leaned in harder, tried to do everything right. But here's the truth. You don't make a man obsessed by being easy to get or desperate to please. You do it by becoming unforgettable. And that starts with boldness. Here's the shift. What if you stopped chasing and started mastering your presence? What if you flipped the entire script and made him do the emotional work? You see, it's not about playing games. It's about understanding male psychology, emotional rhythm, and energetic influence. And the good news, you don't need to fake it. You don't need to be someone you're not. What you do need are the right moves, the kind that aren't loud or desperate, but calibrated, deliberate, and stoic in power. Because the truth is, a man doesn't fall for perfection, he falls for presence. He becomes obsessed with the woman who moves with purpose, speaks with clarity, and exits at the emotional peak. The one who knows how to create hunger tension and mystery, not because she's manipulative, but because she's masterful. Think about it. When was the last time you left a moment unfinished on purpose? When did you last walk away at the height of intensity, not because you were unsure, but because you knew the value of restraint? That's where real obsession is born. Not in comfort, but in tension. Not in overexposure, but in intimate distance. And yes, there's a way to do it without losing yourself or turning cold. In fact, it's the opposite. These 6 bold moves are about embodying your authentic power. They're rooted in presence, emotional control, and intentional energy, not superficial tactics. This is for the woman who's done being the one who waits. This is for the woman who's ready to lead, not with force, but with undeniable energy. So here's what we're diving into today. Not another set of tips you'll forget by tomorrow, but a roadmap, a mindset shift. 6 bold, calculated moves that will change the way a man sees you, that will make him feel you long after you're gone, that will imprint your energy on his mind and body in a way he can't explain but can't stop thinking about. If you're ready to stop being forgotten and start being unforgettable, to stop chasing and start drawing him in with stoic love, then stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly how to become the woman who doesn't need to play the game, because she is the game. Ready? Let's begin. 1, master the art of presence and absence. There's a moment, subtle yet seismic, in every meaningful connection between a man and a woman. A woman. Urgency rush to fill that space. They speak too quickly. They offer too much. They stay too long. They mistake that intensity for an invitation to give more, as if generosity will guarantee intimacy. But the woman who truly understands the psychology of obsession knows better. She knows that what a man remembers most isn't the woman who gave everything without being asked. It's the woman who knew when to pull back, the woman who let him hunger, the woman who didn't fill the silence, but shaped it. She doesn't fear absence because she understands its power. She knows that in the masculine psyche, what's felt and not fully satisfied lingers. What's craved and interrupted becomes addictive. This isn't game playing, it's pacing. And pacing is everything. Think about music. A song doesn't move you because it's one long continuous note. It moves you because of rhythm, the pauses, the tension, the spaces between the sound. A bold woman brings that same principle into every interaction. She knows that if she's always there, always responding, always available, she becomes routine, predictable, consumed. And once consumed, desire fades. The masculine doesn't long for what he already possesses. It chases what it almost had, what it tasted, but didn't fully devour. This is not cruelty, it's design. You see, most women collapse under the weight of potential. They feel a man's attention growing, and their instinct is to lean in harder to match his energy, to prove their value before he slips away. But in doing so, they rob him of the experience of wanting her, of needing to reach, of building hunger over time. But what if instead you learn to pause, to smile, and step back to let him come closer instead of flooding him with availability? That's not withholding. That's allowing space for pursuit. Masculine energy is wired for pursuit. It finds purpose through challenge, through effort, through striving towards something it perceives as valuable. And just out of reach, not unattainable, but not guaranteed. That's the sweet spot. When you always text first, always say yes, always show up, you signal one thing: I'm already yours. But when you show interest with restraint, warmth with boundaries, affection without urgency, you signal something entirely different. I'm open, but I'm not automatic. And that distinction is everything. When a man senses that your time, your energy, your presence is earned, he shifts. He becomes invested. And here's the secret few people will tell you. Emotional investment creates obsession. Not sex, not beauty, not even chemistry. Obsession is born in the space where desire is cultivated, not instantly satisfied. Where a man is left wondering, where he plays back your smile in his mind, replays your words, reimagines what could have happened if you hadn't walked away when you did. That loop, that mental replay is what binds his attention. That's where you live in his mind because the brain remembers unresolved. There's even a psychological term for this, the Zeigarnik effect. It tells us that people remember incomplete experiences more intensely than those that are neatly tied up. So when you leave at the emotional peak, when you don't explain everything, don't give everything, don't stay too long, you activate that effect. You become the moment that never quite finished. And that unfinished feeling becomes magnetic. But here's the challenge. This move requires emotional strength. It requires a woman to regulate her own desire, her own fear of loss, her own conditioning that says, if I don't give now, he'll find someone who will. That is the fear that keeps women trapped in overgiving and under-receiving. But a woman grounded in stoicism doesn't act from fear. She acts from alignment. She doesn't abandon herself just to keep someone interested. She trusts that true desire doesn't vanish at the first boundary. It intensifies, it deepens, it grows in the space where it's invited, not demanded. And yes, it takes courage to walk away when every nerve in your body wants to stay, to pause the moment when you could dive deeper, to close the door gently and let him wonder what would have happened if you hadn't. But that courage is what makes you unforgettable. Because while other women flood him with validation, you leave him with a question. Not confusion, but curiosity. Not manipulation, but mystery. And mystery in a world drowning in overexposure is rare, it's sacred, it's powerful. Let's be clear, this isn't about emotional unavailability. This is about emotional intelligence. It's not about punishing a man or making him earn your love through games. It's about calibrating your presence to match your worth. It's about knowing when your energy will be most felt, not when it's most convenient. And when you master that, you stop being a woman he casually likes. You become the woman he emotionally orbits. The one he can't quite put his finger on. The one whose absence feels louder than most people's presence. That's not magic. That's the intentional design of a woman who understands timing. Think about the moments you've replayed in your own life. Chances are the ones that haunt you weren't the ones where everything was resolved. They were the almosts, the pauses, the what could have been. That same principle holds true for him. When you create those, almost you leave him wanting. Not just sexually, but emotionally. He doesn't just want your body, he wants your why, your story, your return. And because you didn't rush to give it all, he has something to look forward to, something to pursue, something to respect. That's where the psychological imprint takes root. You don't need to yell. You don't need to perform. You simply need to know when to leave. Not in anger, but in grace. Not in silence, but with impact. A slow smile, intensely than those that are neatly tied up. So when you leave at the emotional peak, when you don't explain everything, don't give everything, don't stay too long, you activate that effect. You become the moment that never quite finished, and that unfinished feeling becomes magnetic. But here's the challenge. This move requires emotional strength. It requires a woman to regulate her own desire, her own fear of loss, her own conditioning that says, if I don't give now, he'll find someone who will. That is the fear that keeps women trapped in overgiving and under-receiving. But a woman grounded in stoicism doesn't act from fear, she acts from alignment. She doesn't abandon herself just to keep someone interested. She trusts that true desire doesn't vanish at the first boundary. It intensifies, it deepens, it grows in the space where it's invited, not demanded. And yes, it takes courage to walk away when every nerve in your body wants to stay, to pause the moment when you could dive deeper, to close the door gently and let him wonder what would have happened if you hadn't. But that courage is what makes you unforgettable. Because while other women flood him with validation, you leave him with a question. Not confusion, but curiosity. Not manipulation, but mystery. And mystery in a world drowning in overexposure is rare, it's sacred, it's powerful. Let's be clear, this isn't about emotional unavailability, this is about emotional intelligence. It's not about punishing a man or making him earn your love through games. It's about calibrating your presence to match your worth. It's about knowing when your energy will be most felt, not when it's most convenient. And when you master that, you stop being a woman he casually likes. You become the woman he emotionally orbits, the one he can't quite put his finger on, the one whose absence feels louder than most people's presence. That's not magic. That's the intentional design of a woman who understands timing. Think about the moments you've replayed in your own life. Chances are the ones that haunt you weren't the ones where everything was resolved. They were the almosts, the pauses, the what could have been. That same principle holds true for him. When you create those, almost you leave him wanting, not just sexually, but emotionally. He doesn't just want your body. He wants your why, your story, your return. And because you didn't rush to give it all, he has something to look forward to, something to pursue, something to respect. That's where the psychological imprint takes root. You don't need to yell. You don't need to perform. You simply need to know when to leave. Not in anger, but in grace. Not in silence, but with impact. A slow smile, a deliberate pause, a confident exit. That's what makes him ache in your absence. Because it's not about being seen, it's about being missed. And the woman who understands this holds the power of the pause. She moves not with desperation, but with deliberation. She owns her space so fully that when she exits it, the absence is felt in the bones. That's stoic femininity. That's power without noise. That's attraction without performance. And that's the first bold move that makes a man truly obsessed. Pursued. So let him pursue, let him feel your absence like an ache. Let him earn your return, not because you're punishing him, but because your presence is sacred, not casual. That is not emotional distance. That is energetic discipline. That is how you become the moment that replays in his mind, the memory that haunts him at 2 a.m., the unfinished thought that keeps his attention long after others fade. And that sounds powerful. It's because it is. This is not about ego. It's about essence. This is not about games. It's about gravitas, the kind of calm, anchored magnetism that only comes from a woman who isn't afraid to walk away, not forever, but at the right time. She knows that her presence has power, and that power is amplified not by constant exposure, but by strategic absence. It's stoicism in motion, not reaction response, not chasing choosing. And the man who experiences that will not forget you. He won't move on easily because he didn't just meet a woman. He encountered a mystery, a rhythm, a presence that awakened something deeper in him, something primal, something unfulfilled. And in that gap, he becomes obsessed, not just with your body, not just with your beauty, but with the space you left behind and the craving to fill it. 2, speak your desires without apology. There is a quiet yet piercing kind of power in a woman who doesn't shrink her desires to make others comfortable, who doesn't dilute her truth in order to seem easier to love. When a woman speaks her desires without flinching, without softening the edges, without wrapping them in apology, she awakens a visceral response in a man, not because she's trying to impress him, but because her clarity disrupts everything he's used to. In a world where men are bombarded with hints, indirect messages, and silent expectations, meeting a woman who simply says what she wants clearly, directly, and with calm authority is disarming. And in that disarmament obsession begins, think about it. How often have you wanted to ask for something? A kiss, a moment of silence, a deeper level of effort, but held back because you were afraid of being too much, too emotional, too forward. That hesitation doesn't protect your connection. It erodes it. A man doesn't feel closer to you when you hide your truth. He feels disconnected, confused, like he's trying to solve a puzzle without all the pieces. But when you state your truth with the grounded power of a woman who knows her worth, something shifts. Something wakes up in him. Because masculine energy isn't repelled by female desire. It's repelled by emotional fog. He doesn't want to decode you. He wants to connect with you. And connection doesn't come from perfection. It comes from honesty. But here's the twist. The way you deliver that honesty matters. It's not about yelling, demanding, or controlling. It's about expressing your wants from a place of calm inner authority. When you say, I want you to kiss me like you mean it, you're not taking power away from him. You're giving both of you the opportunity to connect more deeply. When you say, I love when you lead like this, you're not surrendering. You're inviting. And when you say, I need quiet right now, you're not rejecting him. You're protecting the emotional rhythm of the moment. These statements don't push him away. They pull him closer because they're anchored in self-awareness, not insecurity. And this is where stoicism enters the picture. A stoic woman doesn't speak from urgency. She doesn't beg to be heard. She knows that her words have weight. And so she speaks only when it matters. And when she does, the room changes. Her voice isn't louder. It's more intentional. She doesn't talk over people to get attention. She waits for silence, then fills it with truth. That pause, that stillness, that's where real power lives. Because in a world of noise, the voice that resonates is the one that cuts cleanly through the chaos. This kind of woman doesn't fear her desires. She respects them. She treats them as sacred, not because she expects the world to bow to them, but because she refuses to ignore them. She doesn't present her needs as ultimatums. She presents them as invitations. And because there's no shame in her delivery, there's magnetism in her message. That kind of energy is unforgettable. It doesn't just get heard, it gets felt. It moves through his skin, into his bones, into the parts of him that crave direction without dominance, clarity without control. And the truth is, most men are starving for this kind of honesty. Not the raw, chaotic oversharing that passes as vulnerability, but the calm clarity of a woman who says, here's what I want. And then lets the moment breathe. Because the moment you stop filtering your truth to protect his ego is the moment you start building real intimacy. And real intimacy is where obsession takes root. Not in performance, but in presence. Not in guesswork, but in grounded expression. But most women still hold back. Why? Because they were raised to believe that being desirable meant being agreeable. That speaking too boldly made them demanding, unattractive too much. But those are lies handed down by a culture that fears female power. And when you internalize those lies, you become a shadow of yourself. You disconnect from your own hunger. And a disconnected woman cannot attract deep connection because she's too busy managing everyone else's comfort. But a woman who has stepped into her full self, who trusts her voice, her wants, her fire, that woman doesn't need to manipulate attention. She magnetizes it because she speaks from her core. And when a man hears that something primal in him stirs, he doesn't just want her body. He wants to be invited into her world. And she offers that invitation not through seduction games, but through truth. Here's where Stoic love comes in. It teaches you to value restraint, not silence, expression, not explosion, ownership, not over-explanation. A Stoic lover doesn't scream to be understood. She states, she stands, she lets it land. And if it doesn't land, she doesn't chase, she simply pivots. Because her truth is not a request for validation, it's a compass. And if a man can't walk in her direction, she doesn't drag him. She lets him go. That's the kind of emotional sovereignty that makes a man wake up at 2:00 a.m. wondering why he still feels her voice in his chest, why he still replays that one sentence she said calmly, confidently, as if it were echoing in a canyon. Because it's not just the content of her words, it's the clarity behind them. That's what gets under his skin. That's what leaves him obsessed. Because most women speak in riddles, but she speaks in truths. And a man will never forget the woman who told him what she wanted, not for control, but for connection. So if you've ever doubted whether it's okay to ask, to speak up, to express what you crave, let this be a reminder. Not only is it okay, it's necessary, it's essential, it's magnetic. And when you do it with calm, anchored energy, you become the exception to every woman he's ever met. You become the one he stops comparing everyone else to, the one he feels safer around, even as he's being challenged, because you didn't perform to be chosen, you expressed to be understood. And that is the boldest move of all. If this message speaks to you, take a breath, drop into your truth, and express your reaction. Don't hold back. If you felt the power of this part like this video, and comment number 1 below to let me know you're ready to speak without shrinking. And don't forget to subscribe, because this journey into bold feminine clarity is just getting started. Let's keep going. 3, use touch as a statement, not a reaction. There is a profound difference between touch that responds and touch that declares. Most people, especially women, conditioned to wait for permission touch as a reaction when guided, when invited, when it's obvious. But there is a rare kind of woman, bold in her presence and calm in her knowing, who uses touch not as a question, but as a statement. She doesn't need a cue to act because her touch doesn't ask, it asserts, not from aggression, not from manipulation, but from absolute embodiment. And that difference isn't subtle, it's seismic. In the Stoic love philosophy, touch is not merely physical contact. It is presence made tangible. It is a message of emotional certainty sent through the skin, bypassing logic and awakening something deep in a man's nervous system that words could never reach. Imagine a woman who mid-conversation runs her fingers gently across the inside of his wrist, not to provoke, but to anchor the moment. Imagine her resting her hand on his chest while listening, not flinching, not hesitating. Because that space belongs to her energy, and she's not afraid to occupy it. These gestures, subtle yet calculated, carry the weight of intention. They don't scream for attention, they claim it. Most women wait to be touched, as if contact is a gift granted by the man. But the woman who understands the art of embodied boldness moves first. She doesn't need the perfect timing or verbal affirmation. She trusts the silent cues, the breath shift, the stillness, the rising emotional temperature. She senses, not calculates. She feels, not analyzes. That's the essence of stoicism in sensuality. A steady hand that knows where it belongs and why, because her body is not just a reaction to his desire, it is a presence of its own. And when she chooses to make contact, it communicates far more than attraction. It communicates certainty. And masculine energy, which often operates in performance mode, achieve, impress, earn, finds itself disarmed by that kind of feminine clarity. Disarmed but not weakened. In fact, it feels seen, chosen, claimed, because the message is not, I need you to validate me. It's, I'm here because I choose to be. And that certainty is rare, it's powerful, it's unforgettable. A man may not remember the exact words a woman said, but he will remember the way she touched him with purpose. He will remember the hand on the back of his neck while she kissed him firm but calm, pulling him deeper into the moment. He will remember the slow drag of her fingertips down his spine as she walked away. He will remember the heat, not because it was overtly sexual, but because it was grounded, alive, embodied. And that embodiment is magnetic. It speaks to a man's deepest hunger, not just for physical pleasure, but for emotional presence. He doesn't just want to be touched, he wants to be met. And too often women deprive themselves of this power because they've been told to wait. Wait until he initiates. Wait until it's obvious. Wait until the moment is unmistakably safe. But the woman who moves with stoic sensuality doesn't wait. She doesn't act from recklessness, but from deep attunement. She feels the pulse of the moment. She feels her own readiness. And when she moves, it's not reactive, it's intentional. That kind of touch changes the temperature of the room. It creates emotional gravity. It says without saying, this moment belongs to us. I'm not here to ask for connection. I am connection. And that kind of touch doesn't just excite him. It calms him. It grounds him. It pulls him out of his head and into his body, into the now, into her presence. That is a form of power most men rarely experience because so much of their world is performance-based, at work, in public, even in bed. They are used to initiating, leading, proving. But when a woman leads, not with dominance, but with energy, she flips the script. She doesn't strip him of power. She frees him from the need to perform. She gives him permission to receive. And that is unforgettable. That's what creates emotional addiction. Because now he's not chasing her approval. He's craving her presence. Not for what she gives, but for how she gives it. And that distinction runs deep. Most women think obsession is built through sexual availability, through anticipation, through seduction, games. But in truth, obsession is built when a man feels something through you that he cannot name, cannot recreate, cannot forget. That something is the way your energy enters the room before your body. It's the way your fingers make contact, not to elicit reaction, but to anchor intimacy. It's the way your presence says, you don't need to earn me, but you do need to feel me. That is stoic love in physical form, restraint, intention, stillness, precision. These are not the tools of manipulation. They are the tools of embodiment. A woman who knows how to use her body with wisdom becomes a woman who lingers in a man's psyche long after the moment ends, because she didn't just stimulate his senses. She activated something deeper. And once activated, it doesn't quiet easily. It replays, it revisits. It reopens the doorway between longing and memory, because touch isn't remembered for its technique, it's remembered for its presence. And a woman who touches like she belongs, like she knows her energy shapes the moment, like she's not waiting to be touched, but choosing to touch, that woman becomes mythic, not because she's trying to impress, but because she's so deeply herself in that moment that it leaves an imprint. It says, this is who I am, this is what I choose. And now you felt it. That's a touch he won't forget. Because it wasn't a mirror of his desire, it was a reflection of her certainty. And men don't forget certainty. They chase it, they seek it, they replay it, especially when it comes in the form of an unhurried hand, a knowing palm, a gaze that doesn't ask for permission but holds space for meaning. That kind of boldness doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It only needs to be true. And when truth moves through touch, it speaks louder than any words. So don't underestimate the power of your body, not in how it looks, but in how it leads. Don't underestimate the gravity of choosing when to reach out, when to close the space, when to rest your hand on his skin, not to spark fire, but to build foundation. These are not small gestures. These are seismic signals. And in the masculine mind, they echo. Not because he was starved for affection, but because he was finally met with intention. That is what makes a man obsessed, not the act of touch, but the why behind it. The stillness, the certainty, the emotional intelligence that says, I know what I'm doing, and I'm not doing it for approval, I'm doing it because this moment is mine to shape. That kind of presence changes a man, it disrupts his expectations, it pulls him into awareness, and awareness is where attraction becomes devotion. Because now he's not just chasing chemistry, he's following connection. And the woman who touches with that level of sovereignty becomes more than a lover. She becomes a living memory, not because she gave him everything, but because she was everything in that moment, grounded, present, unapologetically aware. That's stoic love at its core. And that's the third bold move that makes a man obsessed. Not because you reacted, but because you chose. Because you owned the moment with the quiet fire of a woman who leads with her energy, not her fear. 4, control the emotional climate. There's a level of power that doesn't need volume. It doesn't demand attention, doesn't seek control through drama or dominance. It simply is. That power is emotional sovereignty. And it's one of the rarest, most captivating qualities a woman can embody. In a world where emotional chaos is normalized, where reactivity is mistaken for passion, where panic is disguised as vulnerability, where silence is used as punishment rather than power. The woman who can sit still in the fire of her emotions without losing her center becomes unforgettable. Obsession doesn't begin with a chase or a kiss. It begins in the subtle gravity of a woman who stays composed when everyone else would collapse. When a man sees that you don't beg for clarity when he goes quiet, that you don't spiral when tension rises, that you don't perform for tension when energy shifts, he starts to perceive you differently. You're no longer just someone he's attracted to. You become someone he respects. And respect is the soil where deep, lasting obsession grows. This is not about being emotionally unavailable or stoically cold. This is about being emotionally anchored. A woman who practices stoicism in her love life doesn't shut down her emotions. She refines her responses. She doesn't let triggers drive her. She observes, she breathes, she waits for the storm to pass internally before she chooses how to engage externally. And that kind of pause, that moment of non-reaction, that's where the real magic happens. That's the difference between leaving an impression and leaving an imprint. Most women have been told that to keep a man's interest, they need to be open and expressive, to pour everything out, to expose every layer of their inner world immediately. But this is a myth. Yes, vulnerability matters, but unfiltered emotional exposure without discernment doesn't build intimacy. It overwhelms it. It drowns the connection before it has roots. The bold woman, the one who becomes unforgettable, doesn't rush to express everything. She reveals herself like chapters in a novel. She speaks from clarity, not confusion. She shares, but only what has been processed through the lens of self-respect. And in doing so, she controls the emotional climate of every interaction. She doesn't wait for the man to regulate her feelings. She doesn't hand over her peace as if it's his responsibility. She shows up as already whole. And in that wholeness, she offers the kind of space most men didn't even realize they were starving for. A space that doesn't require them to perform or rescue, but simply to be. That level of emotional calmness doesn't make her passive, it makes her powerful. Because when she feels disrespected, she doesn't explode, she exits. When she feels unheard, she doesn't beg, she pivots. When she feels uncertain, she doesn't plead for reassurance, she returns to herself. That's stoic love in practice. Staying in alignment with your values regardless of someone else's behavior, responding, not reacting, choosing, not chasing. And in a romantic dynamic that creates a kind of gravitational pull that can't be faked, the man starts to lean in, not because she forced him, but because her self-possession made everything else feel chaotic by comparison. Her emotional climate becomes a sanctuary, a space of contrast in a world full of noise. She doesn't try to fix him. She doesn't get entangled in his emotional turbulence. She simply shows what calm feels like. And that's what makes her irreplaceable. When conflict arises, she doesn't collapse into victimhood or aggression. She communicates clearly or she walks away. When things get intense, she holds her breath, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. She knows not every moment needs a reaction. Not every silence needs to be filled. And that restraint, that ability to sit in discomfort without unraveling, that's psychological strength. That's what makes her unforgettable. Men aren't used to that. Most of the time, they're met with emotional volatility, with accusations, with desperation masquerading as openness. But this woman is different. She says things like, "I'm feeling a lot right now, and I'm going to sit with it before I respond." Or, "I hear you, and I'm going to take some space to process that," not as a game as truth, as emotional mastery. That kind of statement does more than set boundaries. It raises the bar. It forces the man to meet her where she is, or risk being left behind, not through ultimatums, but through energetic standards. And standards, when delivered with poise, inspire change. They challenge without shaming. They elevate without emasculating. And this is the secret most people miss. Men don't rise for women who scream. They rise for women who don't need to. A woman who controls the emotional climate doesn't suppress her feelings. She shapes them. She channels them. She honors them without letting them rule her. And in doing so, she becomes a mirror for the man, showing him what emotional maturity actually looks like. And that's rare. That's royalty. That's the difference between being a phase and being a force. Because she doesn't run from emotional depth, she swims in it. But she does so with direction, not with drowning. She doesn't fear tension, she leans into it with composure. She doesn't confuse emotional expression with emotional instability. She knows her own nervous system and she commands it like a queen commands her court, with elegance, with restraint, with quiet certainty. And the effect this has on a man is profound. He starts to monitor his own behavior. He thinks before speaking. He respects her boundaries not because she demands it, but because her self-respect leaves no other option. He starts to elevate, not perform. He begins to crave the clarity she brings, the safety she offers, the way her presence feels like alignment. And when you make a man feel emotionally safe when your presence isn't dependent on his reactions, but anchored in your own self-rust, he doesn't want to lose that. He doesn't want to lose you, because now you're not just someone he dates. You're someone who redefines us what partnership even feels like. That's how obsession is born. Not from chaos, but from calm. Not from chasing highs, but from calm. Not from chasing highs, but from offering peace. That's stoicism and intimacy. That's emotional control as seduction. And once a man has tasted that, once he's felt the power of a woman who can hold her emotional state without projecting it, he compares every other woman to her. And they all come up short. Because now his nervous system is hooked on her frequency, on the way she made everything else fade away. Not because she was loud, but because she was anchored. If this speaks to your soul, if you recognize that this is the kind of woman you're becoming or already are, then like this video and drop a number 1 in the comments to affirm that you're done letting emotions control you. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because we're only getting deeper, wiser, and more powerful from here. 5, embrace the power of the unfinished moment. There is something hauntingly unforgettable about a woman who doesn't finish every sentence, who doesn't complete every moment, who knows when to let silence do the talking, who understands that the deepest hooks into a man's psyche are not laid through perfect closure, but through the deliberate creation of emotional tension, of psychological open loops that never fully resolve because they were never meant to. This isn't manipulation, it's precision. And it's one of the most potent, bold moves a woman can master, because the mind, especially the masculine mind, is wired to resolve tension, to finish what was started, to understand the conclusion. And when you interrupt that rhythm, when you step away mid-sentence, when you stop a kiss right before it deepens, when you give a look that implies so much more than what's spoken, you activate one of the oldest psychological laws in human memory, the Zagnik effect, which says that people remember incomplete experiences more intensely than finished ones. And this is not just theory, it's deeply primal. Because in the T, car, unfinished, in the undone, in the unsaid, a man's curiosity ignites. And curiosity is the beginning of obsession. When something is left open, the mind replays it. It expands on it, builds meaning around it. And that meaning becomes more powerful than reality because it's built inside his imagination. And once you live inside his imagination, you are no longer bound by reality. You are mythic, unforgettable, haunting in the best way, because you are the question that never got answered, the story that never ended, the moment that felt like it was going somewhere sacred but was interrupted just long enough to make him crave its return. And most women, without realizing it, ruin this potential every day by giving everything too soon, by over-explaining, by closing every loop, by laying all their emotional cards on the table in the name of honesty or fear or the need to feel safe. But what they don't realize is that mystery is not deception, it's art. And like all great art, it lives in what is not said as much as what is in what is hinted at but left to interpretation. And the woman who knows this becomes more than a partner. She becomes an experience. She becomes the taste that lingers on the tip of his tongue long after she's gone. And not because she played hard to get, but because she knew how to dance with the edge of the moment. She knew how to close the space without fully finishing it. She knew that restraint is far more powerful than release when it's used with intentionality. And so she doesn't rush to say everything she doesn't need to declare her feelings in a monologue. She doesn't answer every question the moment it's asked. Sometimes she pauses, sometimes she redirects, sometimes she lets the moment breathe just a little too long. And in that breath, everything changes. The emotional charge thickens, and the man feels it not with logic, but in his body, in his chest, in the aching awareness that something just slipped through his fingers before he could fully grasp it. And that loss, that lack of closure becomes a thread in his psyche that he keeps pulling, hoping to unravel more. And the more he pulls, the deeper she is woven into him. Not because she said more, but because she knew when to say less. Not because she stayed longer, but because she left at the emotional peak. And this is where Stoicism becomes seductive, not through detachment, but through discipline. Not through withholding as defense, but through deliberate calibration of emotional access. Because a Stoic woman knows that just like music is defined by its rests, intimacy is amplified by its pauses. And she creates those pauses on purpose, not to confuse, but to charge the connection with intensity. And she does this without fear that he'll lose interest, because she understands that interest sustained by overexposure is fragile, but interest sustained by curiosity is resilient, because curiosity builds investment, and investment builds emotional memory, and emotional memory builds obsession. And this kind of woman doesn't fear the unfinished. She welcomes it, because she knows that she is not here to be decoded in one night. She is here to be discovered over time, layer by layer, moment by moment. And that means leaving doors open, not slamming them shut with explanations. That means saying, you felt that too, didn't you? Instead of narrating the entire experience. That means touching his hand and then letting go before he can hold it tighter. That means texting, last night, and letting the silence after say everything. And when he replies with a question, she may not answer right away. Not because she's playing games, but because she trusts that his desire to know more is more valuable than his momentary comfort. And this is not arrogance. This is self-awareness. This is energy control. This is emotional intelligence. And it's so rare that when a man encounters it, he doesn't even know how to categorize it. He just knows he needs more of it. He becomes addicted to the echo she leaves behind, the moment that ended too soon, the story that felt unfinished, and he can't stop thinking about it. Because the tension keeps him mentally invested, keeps him emotionally aroused, keeps him physically drawn in. And while other women are trying to earn his attention through access, she earns it through absence, through incompletion, through the power of almost. And this is the most overlooked skill in modern dating, the ability to create space and let that space work for you. The ability to not rush to define every emotional arc, to not text the long paragraph, to not lean in when leaning back would have multiplied the desire. And in doing so, she becomes unforgettable, not because she gave more, but because she gave just enough to leave him wanting. And that wanting is where obsession lives, because the brain remembers longing far more than it remembers satisfaction. And she becomes the source of that longing, the heartbeat under his silence, the moment he replays when he's alone. And it's all because she knew how to leave the moment unfinished, not broken, not cold, but open, alive, echoing with possibility. And this is the heart of Stoic love. Not rigid, not distant, but masterful in rhythm, rich in silence, potent in restraint. And if you've ever wondered how to be remembered long after the conversation ends, how to be felt in his body when you're not even in the room, how to turn one moment into a memory that haunts him in the most beautiful way, this is how you don't finish the sentence. You don't rush the goodbye. You don't explain the glance. You let him wonder. You let him carry it. You let the mystery deepen inside him. And you do it not from fear, but from absolute knowing that what is unfinished isn't weak. It's wiser, and what is left open becomes eternal in the mind of a man who was never given the full picture, but was gifted the most powerful thing of all, the desire to return and complete what you never fully gave away. 6th, lead with energy, not performance. There's a difference between a woman who walks into a room hoping to be chosen and a woman who walks in already knowing that her presence is a choice in itself. That difference isn't in how she looks, what she says, or even how she moves. It's in the energy she carries. And that energy, when it's rooted in inner certainty, becomes more seductive than anything she could say or wear or do. It's not performance. It's not effort. It's not the exhausting game of trying to be impressive. It's the invisible yet unmistakable command of a woman who leads with her essence, not her image. When a woman shows up without needing to prove her worth, without chasing approval, without tailoring herself to fit what she thinks a man wants, something profound happens. She becomes a mirror, a force, an energetic event. And men feel it instantly. They may not understand it, but they feel it in their nervous system, like a shift in atmosphere. They breathe differently around her. They think more carefully. They feel their own energy rise just to meet hers. That's not seduction by strategy. That's seduction by being. And this is where Stoicism teaches one of its most beautiful lessons, not about being detached, but about being grounded in your own emotional economy. You walk in knowing your energy is valuable. And because you're not performing, you become present. And when a woman is fully present, not distracted by how she's being perceived, not wondering whether she's enough, not scanning for validation, she becomes magnetic. Because presence is what men are truly starving for, even if they don't know how to name it. In a world where most people are disconnected, performative, and externally focused, real presence is so rare, it feels spiritual. And when a woman walks in embodying that, when her energy says, I'm here because I choose to be, not because I need to be noticed, everything about her becomes captivating. Her stillness becomes louder than other people's noise. Her pauses become more powerful than someone else's pitch. Her eye contact becomes an invitation, not a demand. And this is the difference between attraction that fades and obsession that deepens. A man doesn't become obsessed with a woman who mirrors what she thinks he wants. He becomes obsessed with the one who gives him something he didn't even know he needed, the experience of truth. And truth doesn't have to shout, it just has to be. When you lead with energy, you no longer need to hustle for attention. Your presence becomes enough. Your boundaries become clear without confrontation. Your warmth becomes felt without words. And the more rooted you are in your own energy, the more you shift how people show up around you, not through control, but through coherence. Your calmness regulates his chaos. Your confidence calms his uncertainty. Your clarity invites him into stability, not because you're managing him, but because you're modeling what grounded feminine energy looks and feels like. And in that modeling, you don't become his fantasy, you become his compass. Not someone he wants to impress, but someone he feels guided by. That's what flips his internal system. That's what shifts him from surface interest to emotional depth. Because now you're not just someone he wants to be around, you're someone he's learning from without a word. And yes, that kind of leadership requires self-rust. It requires you to stop chasing approval, to stop reacting, to stop over-explaining, to stop shrinking yourself to avoid being too much. It asks you to take up space not by dominating, but by anchoring. Not by pushing, but by radiating. Because true feminine leadership isn't about volume. It's about resonance. It's the frequency you emit when you're not trying to be chosen. It's the gravity you carry when your presence is no longer up for negotiation. And the man who steps into that gravity, he remembers you forever. Because while others made him feel desired conditionally, you made him feel something deeper. The presence of a woman who wasn't trying to win him, but who made him want to rise to meet her. That's not ego. That's essence. That's what stoic love offers you. Not just power and restraint, but influence through emotional congruence. And that congruence is everything. It's why your no feels final, why your yes feels like an invitation to a deeper dimension, why your silence feels weighted with meaning, not emptiness. Because you are not performing for attention, you are curating access. And when a man feels that access is based on alignment, not manipulation, he respects you in a way that pierces his surface defenses. He doesn't just want your body, he wants your approval. Your energy becomes the space he wants to be seen in. And once a man has felt that kind of presence, every other woman who's trying too hard feels flat by comparison, because you're not chasing him. You're not trying to earn him. You're not bending yourself to fit a mold. You're anchoring. You're living from the inside out. And yes, this takes courage. It takes the courage to stop over-functioning, to stop entertaining conversations that don't match your frequency, to stop engaging in relationships that ask you to dim your light just to avoid intimidating someone who hasn't yet met himself. But when you do this, when you fully commit to leading with your energy, not your performance, you become the kind of woman who haunts a man in the best way. Not because you were louder, not because you were sexier, but because you were real. And in today's world, real is the rarest currency of all and the most magnetic. So, if you've ever wondered what makes a woman unforgettable, not for a night, not for a phase, but for a lifetime, it's this. She walks in like she already belongs. She speaks like her truth is sacred. She touches like her body is a prayer. She leads not by demanding attention, but by embodying alignment. And every man who crosses her path feels it. Not just in his head, not just in his body, but in his soul. Because her energy doesn't just fill a space, it changes it. It upgrades it. It blesses it. And once a man has felt that he doesn't just remember her, he craves her, he respects her, he rises for her. So if this resonates, if you feel yourself stepping into that kind of presence, that kind of power, that kind of inner authority that needs no applause, no validation, no performance, then, like this video, drop a number 1 in the comments and subscribe right now, because you're not just watching this, you're living it. You are the bold woman who leads with energy, and that energy is about to change everything. In the end, obsession isn't born in noise. It isn't created through effort, perfection, or performance. It's born in presence, in emotional discipline, in energetic clarity. It's carved into a man's memory by the woman who dares to be bold, not by being loud, but by being undeniably herself. She doesn't chase, she doesn't prove, she doesn't apologize for her fire, she commands without words, she influences without trying. And every move she makes, whether it's walking away at the peak of desire, speaking her wants without flinching, touching with precision, regulating her emotions like a queen, leaving the moment unfinished, or leading with pure energy, becomes a reflection of her inner knowing. That knowing tells her, I am enough without performance. I am powerful without permission. I am magnetic because I no longer hide. She lives her life with the kind of intentionality that leaves a trail behind her, not of chaos, but of impact. And the men who cross her path, they feel it in their bones, in their breath, in the silence that follows every encounter with her, because she didn't give them a script. She gave them a sensation. And sensations like that don't fade. They root, they echo, they evolve into memory, then longing, then the kind of obsession that doesn't feel frantic but reverent. He doesn't just want her, he remembers her. Because what she gave wasn't just access to her body, her time, or her affection. What she gave was a glimpse into the life of a woman who leads herself. A woman who walks in rhythm with her own depth. A woman who doesn't flinch in tension, doesn't overextend in desperation. And she doesn't apologize for taking up space, she simply is. And that presence, that stillness, that power, it's not a performance, it's her baseline. It's what happens when you stop begging to be seen and start owning your visibility. When you stop trying to be loved and start embodying love itself. When you stop waiting and start creating. That is stoic love. Not the absence of emotion, but the art of holding emotion without losing yourself inside it. Not emotional suppression, but emotional sovereignty. And in a world of noise, that sovereignty becomes unforgettable. So don't ask, how do I make him want me? Ask instead, how do I make myself undeniable? Because when you become a woman who no longer performs to be chosen, you become a woman who chooses. And that kind of woman, steady, bold, intentional, doesn't chase. Obsession, she creates it without a single wasted. You think you know what men want. Let's challenge that belief. For most women, sensuality becomes a script, predictable touches, familiar rhythms, and all the right moves they've been taught to use. But what if those moves are only scratching the surface? What if the places you're focusing on are not the ones he's silently yearning for? See, men won't tell you this, but there are hidden parts of their bodies that, when touched with the right energy, don't just stir desire, they awaken devotion. Not just arousal, but a deep, unspoken need to be seen and claimed by a woman who truly understands the power of presence. This is not about becoming someone else. It's about unlocking something already within you, a deeper feminine awareness, a more intuitive rhythm, and the quiet strength to explore a man's body with the same attention and reverence he may have only dreamed of. Here's the common misconception. Men are simple touch here. Say that, do this, and he's yours. But that's a half-truth, and half-truths are dangerous when what you're really seeking is lasting passion, deep connection, and a man who craves you not just for your body, but for how you make him feel in the places no one else dares to touch. What's the truth? That most men live in a state of constant tension, expected to lead, provide, perform, and beneath all of that pressure lives a quiet longing to surrender, to be wanted, to be touched, not for performance, but for presence. And here's where you come in. When you learn where to go, how to touch, how to be fully present with him, everything changes. These aren't techniques for cheap thrills. This is about love, stoic connection, the kind that builds emotional gravity and erotic memory, the kind that makes a man breathe slower, feel deeper, and stay loyal, not out of obligation, but out of desire. You don't need to guess anymore. These 6 zones are rarely spoken of, even less explored, but they hold the power to reset everything he thought he knew about intimacy. And you're about to become the woman who doesn't just turn him on. You change what touch means to him. So let me ask you something. What if you became the one he remembers? Not because you were louder, bolder, or more provocative, but because you touched him where he didn't know he needed it most. What if your next kiss, your next brush of fingertips became a story? His body couldn't stop repeating to itself. This is not a game. This is emotional strategy. This is feminine mastery with stoicism at its core. Calm, clear, deliberate presence. And as we dive into each zone, I want you to feel the energy build, the curiosity rise, and the fire of discovery pull you forward. Because the most magnetic women aren't the ones who rush to the finish line. They're the ones who explore every corner of the journey. Stay with me until the end. The final zone will leave you breathless, not because it's wild, but because it's sacred. And once you understand that kind of erotic presence, he won't just want you, he'll be grounded in you. The nape of his neck where strength meets surrender, there's a reason the back of his neck holds such quiet power. And it's not what you've been told. This spot, hidden in plain sight, overlooked by almost everyone, is more than skin. It's instinct, it's vulnerability wrapped in masculinity. And when you touch it with presence, with purpose, you're not just reaching for his body, you're reaching something much deeper, something ancestral, something that can't be explained, but is always felt. Let's slow down and truly look at this space. Evolution made the back of the neck one of the most protected areas of the body for humans, for animals, for every living thing that has learned to survive. It's where danger comes from behind. It's where instinct screams, stay guarded. And yet when a man allows you access to this place, when he leans into your touch, turns his back to you, exposes this vulnerable angle, it means something. It means trust. It means surrender. And in the philosophy of Stoicism, which teaches calm power, emotional clarity, and presence, surrender is not weakness. It's the most intimate form of strength. It's choosing to be open when it would be easier to stay hidden. So when your fingertips trace along his neck, when your breath warms that space where his hair meets his spine, you're not just touching a sensual zone, you're breaking through his armor. You're communicating a message that doesn't need words. You're safe. You don't need to hold it right now. I've got you. But here's the paradox. Most women don't even think of this. Place it doesn't scream passion the way lips or thighs might. It doesn't announce itself. And that's exactly why it works. Because when you go where others don't, you don't just excite him, you surprise him. You stir something deeper than lust. You activate craving. The craving to be seen, to be understood, to be wanted, not for performance, but for peace. Think about it. How often does a man experience non-demanding touch? Not a kiss meant to lead somewhere, not a hug. That's part of a routine. But a moment where your presence is the gift. No strings, no pressure, just your full attention resting at the base of his neck, showing him that he can let go. That's the kind of touch that doesn't fade. That's the kind of energy that lingers in his body long after you've pulled away. And yes, it can be sexual, but more than that, it's sacred. It speaks to the essence of love, stoic connection, where you bring sensuality with serenity, arousal with reverence. So how do you do it, right? You don't rush, you don't fumble. You come to him like you know what you're doing, not because you've memorized a technique, but because you're tuned into him. You read the cues. Is his breathing slowing? Is he leaning in? Is there a shift in his energy, like something softening underneath the surface? If yes, keep going. If not, pause, breathe. Stay present. Because this moment is not about volume. It's about vibration. Your hands should move like they're remembering something ancient. Drag your fingertips slowly from the curve of his ear down to the base of his neck. Use your nails not to scratch, but to awaken. Let your lips brush that space without the need to kiss hard. Sometimes your breath alone is enough. Sometimes the pause before the kiss is louder than the kiss itself. Whisper his name if you feel moved, not with performance, but with weight. Let it mean something, because when a woman whispers, like she's not just speaking, but claiming he listens, his body listens, his soul listens. Now think about where you can bring this into the everyday. Imagine this. He's at the stove cooking. You come up behind him. No announcement, no agenda, just your arms, wrapping softly around his waist and your head resting at his back. Your hands find their way under his shirt, right to the nape of his neck. Slow, warm, steady. You don't need to say anything. That one moment tells him everything. Or maybe he's focused, working, fixing something, driving. You lean in, brush his hair to the side, and kiss that space with stillness. Not to distract, but to anchor, to remind him that even in movement, he can be held. Or maybe it's late, the day is done, he's laying face down on the bed, and you straddle his back, not for play, not for sex, but for peace. You begin to trace lazy circles where his neck meets his spine. You don't speak. You don't ask. You just offer. And slowly, the tension leaves his body. His muscles surrender. And something else happens. His mind stops racing. He doesn't know why, but he breathes deeper around you. He sleeps better. He feels more seen. This is not random. This is biological. His nervous system is connecting your presence with regulation, with stillness, with that one place in the world where he can just be. That's the mark of a woman who leads with soul, not script. That's stoicism with sensuality. And don't underestimate what that does to a man, because most of them have never felt that before. Never been touched there with care, never been allowed to relax into their bodies instead of bracing for the next demand. You become more than a lover. You become a place of restoration. And in a world that constantly asks him to be on, you are the only space he gets to turn off. That kind of woman is unforgettable. That kind of intimacy is addictive. Now, let me ask you something directly. When was the last time you touched a man, not for what you wanted, but simply for how you wanted him to feel? When was the last time you offered presence without needing performance? If it's been a while, or if you never have, start here. Start with his neck. Start with quiet. Start with reverence. Because this is where strength meets surrender, where the masculine is held, not judged. Where trust is born not through words, but through the language of your fingertips. This is the first key to unlocking the kind of desire that doesn't fade, the kind that remembers, that builds, that deepens. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it is transformative. And once you access this zone with intention, you'll feel the shift in him, in you, in the space between you. You'll feel the power of presence over performance, stillness over noise, love, stoic sensuality over superficial seduction. You'll realize that being unforgettable has nothing to do with being perfect and everything to do with being real, present, intentional. Because when you learn to touch a man in the places that speak not just to his body, but to his soul, you don't just touch him, you change him too. His inner wrists, the pulse of emotional intimacy. There's something almost poetic about a man's wrists. They're quiet, often unnoticed, always exposed. He uses them to hold, to carry, to protect. But few people realize just how sensitive, how powerful, how emotionally loaded this area truly is. The inner wrist isn't about flashy stimulation or dramatic gestures. It's about awareness. It's about noticing the places others forget. It's where his heartbeat rests, where vulnerability pulses just beneath the surface. This zone is intimate, not because it's sexual, but because it's real. It's soft. It's raw. It's the kind of place that reminds him he's human, not just a provider or protector. And in a world where he's expected to be hard, unshakable, and always in control. This kind of touch cuts through all the noise when you reach for his wrist with purpose, without rushing, without demand. You do more than just make him feel good. You make him feel felt. And that matters because stoicism isn't about shutting off emotions. It's about owning them, meeting them with clarity and control. So when your fingers trace the inside of his wrist, you're not only connecting to the most physically sensitive part of his hand, you're accessing the emotional layer beneath his performance. Most women won't go there. They're too focused on what they think will work, too fast, too goal-oriented, but you're different. You're present, intentional, and that presence, that changes everything because the inner wrist, as small and subtle as it is, holds something sacred, permission to feel. Permission to stop performing. Permission to just be. Let's slow it down. Imagine this. You're sitting next to him, not in bed, not in some intense moment, just sitting close. You reach for his hand. Not because you want to hold it like a cliche, but because you want to explore. Your fingers gently find the inside of his wrist, just below the base of his palm. You don't grip. You don't move fast. You simply rest there. Then, without a word, you draw soft circles over his pulse with your thumb. You feel the rhythm of his body speaking to your touch. It's steady, alive, real. That's the kind of moment that plants a seed inside him. One he may not understand, but he'll never forget. Or maybe it's more intimate after a long day when he's laid back quiet and open, you take his hand again. This time you turn it palm up. You place your lips just under the curve of his thumb where the skin is soft. And or you kiss it like it means something, because it does, because your presence isn't performative, it's devotional. There's something ancient about that kind of gesture, something spiritual, because when you honor his body with that kind of awareness, you don't just connect, you claim, not in a way that takes power from him, but in a way that reminds him he's allowed to be more than the roles he plays, that he's allowed to receive. Most men never get that. They're trained to give, to push, to lead. And yet here you are reaching for one of the most overlooked places on his body, not to excite, but to understand. That's the kind of gesture that rewrites his story about intimacy. It tells him you see him, not the facade, not the expected, but the core, the quiet part of him that no one has really touched. And yes, this will wake something up in him. He may not be able to name it. He may get quiet, even shy, but deep down, he will feel it. He will associate you with calm, with curiosity, with emotional gravity. And when he's away from you, he'll remember. He'll touch his own wrist in a moment of stillness and feel the echo of your presence. That is how sensuality becomes memory. That is how you leave a mark, not on his skin, but on his nervous system. Now, let's go deeper. Do you know what kind of power you're offering when you touch him there? In moments of conflict, when tension rises and emotions are charged, everyone expects distance, everyone expects coldness or retreat or fire, but you reach for his wrist, not to control, not to silence, but to anchor. And in that moment, your touch becomes an invitation not to end the conversation, but to stay present within it. You're saying, I'm still here. Even when it's messy, even when it's hard, that kind of emotional grounding is rare. Most people react, but you respond with calm, with touch, with feminine stillness. That's love's stoic power in motion, a power that does not rush to be heard, but offers space for connection, a power that changes the course of conflict without a single word. And over time, that small act becomes something bigger, something sacred. His body begins to associate your hands with comfort, with presence, with return, and you become more than just a partner, you become a sanctuary, the woman who holds space for his complexity, who doesn't need to be loud to be powerful, who doesn't need to dominate to lead. That's real magnetism. And don't be surprised if months from now he reaches for your wrist in return, because he'll want to feel what you gave him. He'll want to mirror the energy that healed something inside him. This is where eroticism meets emotional intelligence. This is where a whisper of touch becomes the loudest voice in the room. This is the kind of woman you become when you choose intention over impulse, presence over pressure, depth over drama. Touch a man. Do you do it to awaken something in him or just to get something from him? Because this touch, this wrist, this pulse, this quiet isn't about taking, it's about offering. And that offering changes everything. Let's be honest. The world doesn't teach women to go slow. It teaches us to be impressive, to perform, to check the boxes. But true feminine power is not in performance, it's in presence. It's in knowing that your stillness can be more electric than anyone else's noise, that a simple graze across his pulse can be more intimate than anything sexual, that when you see his hands not just as tools but as parts of his emotional body, you become unforgettable. His wrists are the threshold, the space between effort and ease, between doing and being. And when you cross that threshold with awareness, you build more than connection. You build craving, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that comes back to you even when you're not around. Because the truth is, most men don't crave attention. They crave attunement. And when your fingertips meet his inner wrist, like you're reading a language only you understand, he feels it. Every part of him feels it. And he won't just want more, he'll wait for it. That's the power of stoicism woven with seduction. That's what makes you the one his body remembers. So don't underestimate this. Don't brush past it in search of louder gestures. Come back to this space again. And again, in silence, in chaos, in laughter, in sleep, teach his body that your touch here means something, that it means he is safe, seen, held, known. And over time, you will build a rhythm with him, a rhythm that doesn't require music, a language that doesn't need words, a closeness that no one else can copy. This is your art. This is your craft. This is the mark of a woman who has awakened her love stoic power, not by shouting it, but by knowing exactly when to whisper. And if this resonates with you, if you feel the truth of this in your bones, then don't keep it to yourself. Like, and comment number 1. If this video speaks to you, and if you're ready to explore more of these sacred, silent, powerful truths that unlock something real inside a man, subscribe now, because what's coming next will take you even deeper. 3 behind his ears, the gateway to his nervous system. There's a reason the area behind a man's ears can shift his entire energy in a single breath. Not because it's obvious, not because it's traditionally seductive, but because it speaks directly to the part of him that has stopped listening to the world around him and started listening only to you in the quiet space just beneath the edge of his ear, where the skin softens and sensitivity sharpens, lies a forgotten channel of connection, one that bypasses logic, cuts through distractions, and whispers straight to his nervous system. Most people miss this zone entirely. They don't realize how much power lives there or how intimately tied it is to memory, anticipation, and surrender. But most people, you're not interested in surface connection. You want to reach him where he lives behind the armor. That's what sets you apart. That's what turns a touch into a trigger and a whisper into a lasting mark. The ear is not merely a receiver of sound, it's an amplifier of energy. Every breath, every word, every brush of lips along that edge isn't just physical, it's emotional frequency. And when you get close enough to use it with presence and precision, you unlock something ancient in him, something sacred, something he doesn't even know he's been missing until he feels it. And this isn't about being loud. This isn't about being dominant or dramatic. This is about accessing the space where stillness becomes thunder and softness becomes command. It's the calm power of feminine energy moving through stoic presence, where everything you do is intentional, grounded, and undeniable. So let's break this down. Think about how rarely a man is touched. There, behind the ears, isn't a place that gets casual attention. It's rarely kissed, rarely explored, but that's what gives it such potency. It's not desensitized. It hasn't been dulled by overuse or expected routine. It's pure. So when you bring your presence to this spot, it registers immediately. He doesn't have a defense for it. There's no preset reaction. He just feels viscerally, fully. And here's where it gets deeper. That space just behind the earlobe and along the hairline is directly connected to the vagus nerve, one of the most powerful channels in the human body for regulating emotional response, arousal, and calm. That means your touch there is not just a tease. It's a neurological invitation. You're telling his body it's okay to feel. It's okay to lean in. It's okay to release. And that message delivered through your breath or the brush of your lips bypasses his brain. It goes straight to instinct. That's the power of sensory seduction. But this power only works when it's real, when you're truly present. Because if you fake it, if you go through the motions, he'll know, the body knows when it's being touched with distraction, it tenses, it resists. But when your energy is grounded in truth, when your hand finds the back of his neck and slides slowly upward until your thumb grazes the edge of his ear, when your mouth finds that spot and doesn't rush it, unlocks him. He doesn't know why. He might even try to brush it off, but he'll feel it in his spine and his breath and the way he suddenly pauses almost involuntarily. That pause is gold. That pause is the beginning of presence. And when you combine that physical connection with vocal energy, when you speak softly into his ear while your touch lingers, you're not just making a sound. You're writing a story into his memory. Your voice becomes a rhythm. His body starts to crave, not because of what you say, but because of how you say it. Lower your tone. Breathe between words. Let your breath become part of the message. You could say the most simple things. His name, a playful phrase, a subtle request. And it lands like a secret spell because you're not delivering words, you're delivering emotion. This is not performance, this is mastery. It's knowing that seduction lives in the unseen spaces, the unspoken moments. It's understanding that anticipation is more powerful than action. That the space between, touches between words, between breath, is where longing builds. And longing is everything. It's what turns ordinary into unforgettable. It's what makes a man sit in silence later and suddenly feel the ghost of your lips behind his ear, wonder where that thought came from, and realize it was you, your presence, your energy, your intention. So how do you bring this into real life? It's simpler than you think and more powerful than you expect. Next time he's focused on something else, working, talking, driving, lean in from behind. Don't speak immediately. Just rest your lips an inch from his ear. Let your breath be the first thing he feels. Then slowly say his name. Not fast, not loud, just enough for it to settle into him. And pause. Let the silence carry weight. Then maybe a word, a sentence, something playful or grounding or simply true. I see you. You drive me crazy. You're mine. Whatever fits the moment. But let it come from your core. That's what will reach him. Or picture this. He's standing in front of you, not expecting anything, and you reach up, tuck your fingers just behind his ear like you're brushing back his hair, but you don't stop. Your thumb drags lightly over the skin there. Your gaze stays steady, and then without a word, you lean in and kiss just behind his lobe. Not deep, not dramatic, just enough to say, I know what this does to you. And then you pull back, you don't linger, you give him the space to feel, and he will. That small, potent move will stay in his nervous system far longer than anything loud or overt. It's the quiet gestures that carry the deepest charge. It's the places other women overlook that become your signature. That's how a stoic woman seduces, not by shouting, but by knowing, by listening, by seeing, not just the man in front of her, but the man behind the roles, the expectations, the armor, and that's why the ear is so powerful, because it symbolizes more than sensation. It represents surrender. To hear is to receive. And most men aren't used to receiving without strings attached. They're not used to being pursued with presence. They don't know how to let go until someone shows them they can. And you become the one who shows them empathy. You become the one who turns the back of his ear into a sacred trigger, not of lust, but of longing. Because now when he hears your voice in a certain tone, in a certain space, he doesn't just hear you, he feels you. And that's the difference between noise and intimacy, between performance and imprint, between temporary and unforgettable. So ask yourself, when was the last time you truly listened to what a man's body is asking for? Not the obvious parts, not the programmed expectations, but the silent requests, the tension under his stillness, the softness behind his strength. That's what this space reveals. And when you learn how to engage it, not every time, not on cue, but with rhythm, with intention, you create a loop in his body, a feedback cycle of safety, arousal, and connection. And that loop is what builds emotional addiction. Not a desperate craving, but a grounded desire, a magnetism that pulls him toward you again and again, even when logic says nothing happened. That's what makes this sacred. That's what builds a love stoic bond, where presence and pleasure are not competing forces, but reflections of each other. So next time you're close, don't underestimate the edge of his ear. Don't rush past it. Don't think it's too small to matter, because it matters more than, it matters because it's overlooked. It matters because it's quiet. And it matters because it's his doorway to stillness, a stillness he only accesses through your touch, a stillness he'll come back to, not because he needs more stimulation, but because he wants to feel known fully, silently, powerfully. That's the kind of intimacy you're building here. Not loud, not fast, but indelible, the kind that leaves echoes long after you've gone for. The small of his back, the hidden core of masculine tension. When was the last time you paid attention to the small of a man's back? Not because it was exposed, but because it was waiting to be acknowledged. It's strange, isn't it? We spend so much time thinking about all the places that scream for attention, the obvious ones, the ones that media tells us matter most, but rarely do we stop and listen to the body's silence. And the small of his back, it's one of the most silent places of all, not because it lacks sensation, but because it holds everything in. This is where years of stress collect. It's where he stiffens unconsciously when life gets heavy, where he braces himself for the next pressure, the next decision, the next responsibility. You see, men don't talk about this place. And they rarely invite anyone there, not with words, but the body never lies. His lower back holds it all, the weight of leadership, the push to perform, the quiet burden of being expected to always be okay. And when your hands find their way there, when your energy lands with presence and not performance, something inside him starts to release. He may not even know what's happening. He may not be able to explain why your touch at his waist makes his breath go shallow or his eyes soften, but he'll feel it deeply, because this isn't just about anatomy. It's about emotion. It's about stoicism meeting surrender, that moment where the masculine can finally exhale, not in weakness, but in power. That moment where you remind him he doesn't have to hold everything alone. And that's where you become unforgettable. The small of the back is an access point to more than pleasure. It's a gateway to emotional reset. Your hands sliding gently along his lower spine say something. Most people never tell him, you don't have to carry it all right now. I'm with you. And in that moment, you become not just a lover, but a force of balance in his life. The one who doesn't need to shout to be heard. The one who reaches him not through demands, but through awareness. Think about that. How many women ever offer that? How many reach for this place, not as part of a routine, but as a ritual? When your touch becomes ritual, it leaves residue in his memory. When your fingers trace the curve of his waist and settle just above his hips, you teach his body to associate you with peace. And peace, real peace, is rare. He can find excitement anywhere, but where can he find rest? Where can he find permission to drop the mask and just be held? You offer that not with words, but with action, with stillness, with knowing exactly where to go and how to touch, and the lower back with all its nerves. And photography, you need presence. You need to let your hand rest there. When he's standing in the kitchen, let your fingers lightly circle that space. When he's lying down, let your nails drag slowly just above his waistband when he walks past you. Not with force, not with seduction, but with sacred attention. And when he feels it, really feels it, he won't just react physically, he'll recalibrate emotionally. He'll begin to associate your presence with the only place he gets to feel his own softness without shame. And that's power, not the kind that takes, but the kind that holds. Love, stoic power, is exactly that feminine energy that knows how to steady the masculine, not overpower it. This is where your true influence lies. not in being louder or more intense, but in knowing where to go and how to linger. The small of his back is where strength bends, where duty begins to loosen its grip. And when you enter that space with intention, with awareness, with calm desire, you transform the way he understands intimacy. Most men think closeness is supposed to be fast, or it's supposed to lead somewhere. But when you pause there, just pause and let your hands settle as if you're saying, I see you. Even here, you begin to rewrite his nervous system. And touch that rewrites the nervous system. That's the kind he comes back for. That's the kind he remembers when he's alone, when he's overwhelmed, when he's trying to be everything for everyone else. Because now his body knows that your hands at his back mean release. They mean surrender. They mean he doesn't have to perform. And for a man who's always performing, always providing, that's not just intimate, that's revolutionary. So what does this look like in real life? It's the way you move behind him and wrap your arms around his waist, not to pull, but to rest. It's the way your palms find that soft line just above his hips when you're dancing or walking together. It's how your breath meets the fabric of his shirt when you kiss his spine through cotton, slow, deliberate, reverent. Or it's the simple way you slide your fingers under his clothes while he's face down, tracing slow waves into his skin, like a language he's always longed to hear, but never learned to speak. That's your gift. Not because you're doing something wild, but because you're doing something no one else bothers to do. Because you're not seeking a reaction. Deepest desire lives, not in the fireworks, but in the fire that never burns out, that quiet flame that stays alive long after the moment ends. So let me ask you this, are you willing to touch him where the world forgets to? Are you willing to explore not the loudest places, but the ones he doesn't even realize are asking to be seen? Because if you are, then the small of his back is your doorway, not to control, but to co-regulate. Not to dominate, but to invite, to lead with soft certainty. And that certainty doesn't say, I need you to respond. It says, I'm already here. That's what builds erotic memory. That's what makes a man crave, not just your body, but your presence. Because presence is everything. When you show up fully, when you reach for him with the kind of attention that doesn't flinch or rush, he feels it in his body, in his breath, in the way his shoulders drop a little more each time you pass him and let your palm find that place again. It becomes a rhythm, it becomes a language, a shared space between you and him where words are unnecessary and energy speaks for itself. This is where stoicism and sensuality merge, where feminine softness supports masculine stillness. And in that union, a man doesn't just want more, he remembers more. He remembers who he is when he's not on guard. He remembers that he's allowed to be more than strong, he's allowed to be whole. You offer him wholeness, and you do it one touch at a time. So don't underestimate this place. Don't overlook it. Return to it. Learn it. Memorize the way his body responds to your hands on his lower back. Use it as a way to ground him. Use it as a reminder that even in moments of tension, of chaos, of challenge, your presence brings him back to himself. That's sacred. That's unforgettable. And if this truth moves you, if you feel the resonance of what this kind of touch can awaken in a man, then this moment is yours too. And comment number one, if you're starting to see how powerful your presence really is. And if you're ready to master more of these hidden connections, the ones that don't just excite, but evolve a man, subscribe now, because this is just the beginning. What comes next will take you deeper than ever. 5, the backs of his knees. The element of surprise. It sounds unusual, doesn't it? The backs of his knees, not exactly the first place most women would think to explore, let alone remember. But that's precisely the point. What makes this place so electric isn't how obvious it is, it's how forgotten it is. And it's in those forgotten places where the deepest impact is made, because when you touch a man in the spaces that have never been claimed, when you bring your awareness to the quiet zones of his body that even he doesn't think of as sensual, you create a kind of memory that bypasses expectation and lands directly in his subconscious. He may not have words for it. He may not even realize why your touch sends shivers through him the way it does. But his body will know. His nervous system will register the moment. And from that point on, every time you're near, every time you move by him, even in silence, his mind will return to that sensation. Not because it's loud, but because it's rare. You see, the backs of the knees are packed with nerve endings. The skin is delicate. The area is rarely touched with care. It's a strange mix of vulnerable and strong, exposed but often overlooked in ancient traditions. Bending the knee symbolized respect, humility, devotion, and on a biological level, this space is integral to movement, to agility, to strength. So when you bring your hands or your lips to that zone, you're not just initiating a physical sensation, you're accessing a primal memory in him, a memory of surrender, a memory of being supported, and more importantly, a memory of being reached in a place he didn't even know needed reaching. That's what makes it powerful, not the shock of it, but the significance. The surprise is not in the boldness, but in the meaning. Because you didn't just go somewhere others don't. You went there with care, with presence, with the kind of feminine stillness that says, even this part of you matters to me. That message, delivered without words, lands deeper than any spoken compliment. It tells him he is fully seen, fully valued, not just for what he shows, but for what he hides. And that level of attention, it transforms him. Let's make this tangible. Imagine you're lying with him, and the moment isn't heated, just closed. Maybe his legs are stretched out. Maybe you're beside him, and slowly, without ceremony, your fingers drift downward. You trace the edge of his thigh, not with urgency, but with reverence. You keep going, slower still, until your fingers find that tender space behind his knees. And you stay there, no rush, no sudden pressure, just the feather-light dance of touch over an area that rarely receives it. What happens next is not a performance, it's a shift. His breath may hitch, his muscles may tense, then relax. He may look at you with a question in his eyes. Not because he's confused, but because you've just shown him something he didn't expect. You've touched him, not for a reaction, but for connection, and that breaks the script he's used to. That opens a new door. Now, think about how this builds over time. Maybe it starts subtle. A brush of your hand as you adjust yourself next to him. Maybe it evolves into something deeper, where in moments of intimacy, you guide his legs apart slightly and lean in, letting your breath hover over the space behind his knees. You don't even need to make full contact. The contrast between air and warmth, between your breath and his skin, is enough. And when your lips finally do touch, when you kiss that space softly, deliberately, it will feel to him like an awakening, one he didn't see coming, one he didn't know he needed. And that is the essence of true seduction. Not control, not manipulation, but awakening. Awakening what's been dormant, what's been ignored, what's been hidden under layers of habit and assumption. When you do this, with stoicism at your core, with emotional grounding, with intentional energy, you don't just give him pleasure, you give him permission to be fully human, to be sensual in ways that aren't always tied to dominance or control, to be desired in the hidden corners of himself. And that kind of permission creates something sacred. It builds a connection that isn't dependent on novelty or excitement, but on trust. The trust that you'll go slowly enough to notice him, that you'll care enough to explore even the quiet places. And he will respond, not always with words, but with presence, with openness, with a deeper kind of engagement. This is the language of love, stoic intimacy. And over time, this space becomes a trigger, not in the shallow sense, but in the sacred sense. It becomes the place you touch when he needs grounding, the place you brush against in public discreetly to remind him you're still his. It becomes your secret signal, a physical echo of 1,000 slow, reverent moments shared between the two of you. And it doesn't always have to be romantic. Maybe one night he's sitting on the floor, stretching, tired. Unaware, you walk by, your fingertips slide across the back of his knee. And keep moving, no announcement, no commentary, but the sensation lands, and he turns to look at you, not because he needs something, but because he feels something. That's presence, that's precision, that's erotic intelligence. And it doesn't come from rehearsing, it comes from reading his body like a map filled with places no one else has visited. And you become the explorer who doesn't conquer, but honors, who doesn't rush to arrive, but moves with reverence. That's what creates craving. That's what makes him lean in without knowing why, because he's not just being touched, he's being known. And that kind of knowledge, that kind of attunement doesn't fade. It becomes the baseline, the new standard. And suddenly, no other touch feels as real. No other connection feels as alive, because you touched him in the place where movement begins, where surrender lives, where very few dare to go. And you did it not with force, but with faith. The faith that even this strange, forgotten zone was worthy of love. And that's the gift. That's the offering. So when you think about how to be memorable, not in a loud, demanding way, but in a deep, stoic, grounding way, think about this space, the backs of his knees. Think about how you'll approach it next time. Will you brush against it during a hug? Will you rest your hand there while you sit beside him? Will you lean in one night and kiss it with the kind of awareness that says, even here you are desired? And when you do, watch what happens. Watch how his body shifts. Watch how his energy softens. Watch how something ancient in him wakes up. Because you didn't just reach for what's easy, you reached for what's real. You didn't just explore his body, you explored his being. And that's the difference. That's the magic. That's where real eroticism lives. In the details, in the silence, in the slow, careful devotion to places others ignore. That is your power. That is your invitation. That is how you become the touch he never saw coming. And ever forgets. 6, his hands, tools of power that crave devotion. We see his hands every day. We watch how they move, how they carry, how they build, how they hold. But rarely do we truly stop to ask, what are his hands holding that we can't see? What do they say about the man behind them, the man inside them, the man who so often gives everything away through them and receives so little in return? His hands are not just physical tools. They are extensions of his purpose. They are silent storytellers. Every line, every scar, every callus, every subtle twitch, these are traces of his effort, his memory, his survival. They carry more than strength. They carry history. And when you as a woman, grounded in love's stoic presence, choose to honor his hands, not just with touch, but with reverence, you begin to unlock something sacred in him. Something that has been waiting to be acknowledged, not with noise, but with knowing. Think about what his hands go through. He uses them to lift, to lead, to push away pain, and to pull others closer. He may not even realize how much of his identity is tied to what his hands can do. How often they are asked to serve, to fix, to provide. And yet how often is he asked, what do these hands feel when they are simply allowed to rest? What do they feel when they are held not for what they offer, but for what they are? When you take his hands into yours with slow, deliberate attention, not to redirect them, but to recognize them, you tell him that who he is beyond his function matters. And when your touch becomes a message, his body listens, it relaxes, it yields, it lets go, because you are offering a mirror to his deepest longing to be wanted for his essence, not just his action. Let's explore this with depth. Imagine sitting across from him, just close enough for your knees to brush. The room is quiet. No big moment, no let up. Just presence. You slowly reach for one of his hands, lift it gently, and let your fingers trace the lines in his palm. Not like you're reading a fortune, but like you're learning his story. You pause at his fingertips, hold them softly, then press your lips to the center of his palm. A silent kiss, a sacred gesture. And then you lower his hand without a word. What you've just done is imprint. His body won't forget it. His mind may try to brush it off, but that feeling, the weight of being seen in such a quiet, powerful way will echo in him. It's not about arousing him, it's about awakening him. And that kind of awakening changes everything. Or think of this, you're sitting beside him and he's holding a cup, a book, a tool. His hands are occupied. You lean in, brush your fingers across the veins on the back of his hand and just let them rest there. You don't interrupt. You don't demand. You simply bring presence to the part of him that is always giving and rarely receiving. Over time, this becomes a language he begins to associate. Your touch, not with routine, but with return. The return to himself, the return to softness, the return to safety. This is the space where stoicism and sensuality merge into something transformative. Because stoicism is not about shutting off feeling. It's about owning it with calm, with clarity, with conscious choice. And when a man experiences that kind of emotion through his hands, through the very tools he uses to face the world, he reconnects to himself in a way that no amount of words could ever accomplish. This is the unspoken work of deep intimacy, the kind of intimacy that doesn't ask for attention, it earns it, the kind that doesn't shout over noise, but whispers into the spaces between movements. And here's something else his hands remember. Long after you've gone, long after the moment passes, he'll find himself glancing at them. He won't even know why, but they'll feel different because you didn't just touch his skin, you touched his spirit. Every time he reaches for something, his keys, his jacket, the steering wheel, he'll carry that memory with him. This is where you build emotional gravity. This is where you become not just a partner, but a soul imprint. Now ask yourself, how many women touch a man's hands only for what they want them to do? How often is he touched in a way that doesn't ask anything back? That's your opening, that's your advantage, that's your art. And don't think this can only happen in stillness. It can happen in movement too. While walking beside him, reach for his hand, not to claim it, but to explore it. Let your thumb stroke the space between his knuckles. Let your other hand hold his wrist. Softly, as if to say, I know how strong you are, but I also know you don't have to be strong with me. That level of attunement builds trust. It breaks down resistance, and slowly his body begins to crave your touch, not just because it feels good, but because it feels like truth. And truth, when delivered through feminine grace, is irresistible. So what do you do in more intimate moments when energy is high and emotions are stirred? Don't forget, his hands take them, guide them not because you need control, but because you want connection. Trace your lips along the inside of his wrist. Place his hands where you want to be touched, but hold them there with affection, not force. Let him feel what it's like to be received fully. Let his hands become part of your dialogue, not just physically, but emotionally. And in doing so, you activate one of the oldest instincts within him, the need to give from a place of love, not pressure, because men don't want to be needed out of lack. They want to be wanted out of choice. And your touch, when guided with presence, tells him that he's chosen, that his hands are sacred, that they are more than tools, they are a language. And you are fluent in reading them. Over time, the most unexpected moments will become your playground. While he's driving, your hand resting on his over the gear shift. While he's cooking, your fingers gently massaging the top of his hand as he holds the knife. While he's sleeping, Your palm wrapped around his, not out of habit, but intention. These small moments carry the most weight. They are the markers of a woman who doesn't perform. Touch, she embodies it. She infuses it with meaning. She lets it become her signature. And that's how you become unforgettable, because you didn't need a grand performance. You didn't need complicated strategy. You just needed presence. And presence, when applied to a man's hands, becomes power. It becomes memory. It becomes craving. The good kind, the grounding kind, the kind he doesn't even realize is building inside him until he's away from you. And his hands start to ache, not from strain, but from absence, because they remember what it felt like to be seen, to be touched, without agenda, to be honored. This is the essence of love, stoic connection. It's not about what's loud, it's about what's lasting, it's about what lingers. And it all begins with the places most people. And honoring presence means his character is being seen, his essence is being acknowledged, his quiet excellence is being felt. Because here's the truth about many men. They walk through life unseen in the ways that matter most. They receive praise for results, for outcomes, for achievements, but so rarely for intention, for effort, for growth attempts. And because of that, most men are walking around with an invisible deficit, a hunger to be seen at soul level. When a woman fills that space, not by performing or proving, but simply by reflecting back the unseen beauty of who he is, she becomes emotionally unforgettable. He begins to associate her with aliveness. She awakens something dormant. And it doesn't take a dramatic speech. It's often the smallest, softest moments that carry the most weight. When he's sitting across from her, and she says, "I noticed how you listened to that guy earlier when everyone else was talking over him. That was leadership." Something shifts in him. It's not about praise, it's about accuracy. It's about seeing something true. And once a man feels truly seen, he lowers his guard, not because he's been tamed, but because he feels respected. And respect, more than admiration, is what binds a man to a woman emotionally. This form of appreciation also plays directly into the deepest male psychology, because most men carry unspoken fears of being inadequate, of not measuring up, of never being enough. They may never voice it, but they feel it daily through comparison, rejection, or cultural expectation. So when a woman shows him that he is already enough right now, not because he's perfect, but because she sees and values his direction, not just his destination, it hits him where nothing else can. And this is where appreciation becomes emotional alchemy. It turns ordinary moments into gold. A failed project becomes a bonding experience when she says, "I love how much heart you put into that, even though it didn't work out." A missed goal becomes a moment of intimacy when she tells him, "I'm proud of how you handled that. It shows the kind of man you are." And it's not about sugarcoating failure. It's about honoring effort, about witnessing the man behind the outcome. Because most people only clap when he wins, but the woman who claps when he tries, she becomes irreplaceable. And here's another secret. Appreciation doesn't always need words. In fact, some of the most powerful forms of it are nonverbal. A soft hand on his chest when he shares something. Raw eye contact that holds him longer than necessary after he says something meaningful. Remembering something he mentioned offhand weeks ago and bringing it back in a moment of need. These are emotional echoes. They say, "I was present with you. You mattered in that moment. You still matter now." And the male psyche receives that deeply. Appreciation is not the same as neediness. Neediness says, "I value you because I need you." Appreciation says, "I value you because I see you." One creates pressure, the other creates desire. One demands reassurance, the other offers recognition. And when a woman can hold this energy, grounded, observational, attuned, she becomes the emotional sanctuary he didn't know he was searching for. Specific appreciation is also a mirror. It reflects not only how she sees him, but how she sees the world. Men notice this. A woman who looks for good, who names the noble, who amplifies the admirable. She doesn't just attract men, she inspires them. She becomes a catalyst for self-respect. And the best part, this doesn't require scripts or strategies. It requires presence. Presence sharpens perception. Perception sharpens appreciation, and appreciation sharpens connection. It becomes a cycle of intimacy that feeds itself. The more you notice, the more you connect. The more you connect, the more he opens. The more he opens, the more there is to appreciate. And soon your bond is built, not on effort, but on awareness. And here's a little known truth. Men remember how they feel after they leave your presence far more than what was said. And when he walks away from an evening with you, and can still feel your appreciation echoing in his chest, not because you praised him loudly, but because you reflected him deeply, he craves that feeling again. He associates you with dignity, with worth, with a version of himself he likes better. And he keeps returning to you, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. Specific appreciation builds emotional loyalty. It creates safety without control, intimacy without pressure, admiration without performance. It is a master key in the realm of feminine influence. And the women who know how to wield it, not from manipulation, but from true attunement, they don't chase love. They become the love a man never forgets. That is the silent language of emotional need. And when spoken fluently, it makes a man emotionally addicted not just to your presence, but to the way he feels about himself in your presence. That's the magic. And that's just the beginning. 4. Intellectual and emotional stimulation. Feeding the mind and heart. There's a certain kind of woman who doesn't just turn heads, she turns minds. She lingers in a man's thoughts, not because of how she looks, but because of how she thinks, and more importantly, how she makes him think. While physical attraction might ignite the spark, it's the emotional and intellectual stimulation that keeps the fire burning long after the first glance. And for men, this type of connection runs far deeper than most people realize. Because even though society often teaches men to stay in the realm of action, results, and rationality, the truth is that the male mind, yes, even the one wrapped in confidence and control, craves a kind of feminine curiosity that invites him into new thoughts, perspectives, and emotional landscapes he may have never explored before. Think about it. How often do men actually get to have deep, meaningful conversations that go beyond the surface? How many men are asked, "What do you believe in?" or "What keeps you up at night?" "When did you stop trusting yourself?" Not often. Most of the conversations they have are transactional, functional, about logistics, work, sports, news. Rarely are they invited into emotional depth or philosophical territory without it feeling like an interrogation or a trap. That's why when a woman comes along who's both emotionally and intellectually alive, she stands out like a lighthouse in the fog. She becomes a source of light, not because she has all the answers, but because she asks better questions and she listens. Not to respond, not to judge, but to truly absorb his thoughts, like they're a map to somewhere sacred. When she asks, "How do you see the world?" and then holds space for the answer, like it actually matters to her, she awakens a part of his mind and heart that often stays dormant in everyday life. And that awakening, it's electric. It doesn't just create attraction, it creates attachment. Because every time they talk, he's not just entertained, he's expanded. His brain, his emotions, his inner world begins to associate her with stimulation, inspiration, and self-discovery. She becomes the one person who challenges him and still accepts him, who questions him and still respects him. And that kind of balance, that's rare, that's addictive. It's not about being smarter than him or showing off knowledge. It's about meeting him at the edge of what he knows and inviting him to explore further. It's the way she turns a casual conversation into something cinematic. The way she turns a boring Tuesday night into a mind-bending discussion about purpose, memory, human nature, or the future. And let's not forget the power of emotional stimulation in this equation, because being deep isn't just about intellect, it's about vulnerability, empathy, and emotional nuance. A woman who can say, "Tell me what scares you about success," or "What did love look like in your childhood?" or "When do you feel most alive?" is pulling him into a world where he can reveal his rawest, most unfiltered truths without the fear of being diminished. That's not just intimacy, that's emotional oxygen. And when a man breathes that kind of air around a woman, he starts craving her in a way that isn't logical. It's biological. Because intellectual and emotional stimulation together don't just light up his brain, they trigger dopamine, oxytocin, and all the chemicals responsible for bonding, desire, and memory. He doesn't just remember her, he relives her in his mind. Days later, he'll catch himself thinking about something she said and smiling to himself. Not because it was clever, but because it touched a part of him that most people never even see. And this kind of woman, this curious, grounded, emotionally intelligent muse, becomes his muse, not because she reflects his greatness, but because she helps him discover it. That's why men become emotionally addicted to women who challenge their thinking. She doesn't always agree, and that's the point. Her disagreement feels exciting because it's not dismissive, it's engaging, it sharpens him, it stretches him. It creates a spark that no amount of agreement ever could. He looks forward to their conversations, not because she tells him what he wants to hear, but because she shows him sides of himself he didn't know existed. And this goes beyond debate or wit. It's about being mentally alive together. It's about co-creating new thoughts, laughing over shared absurdities, daydreaming about impossible futures. It's about emotional chemistry wrapped in cognitive curiosity. This is why men stay up until 3 a.m. talking to women who activate their mind. Why they scroll through old text threads, rereading what she wrote. Why they replay voice notes, or recall how she looked at him after he opened up. Because she gave him something more valuable than attention. She gave him stimulation. She fed him. And feeding a man's heart and mind is the most sustainable path to keeping him emotionally locked in. Not trapped, not manipulated, but willingly, gratefully connected. And it's not about being a genius or reading every book on the essay shelf. It's about energy. It's about engagement. It's about a woman who's interested in ideas, who values emotional depth, and who brings her whole self to the conversation. Not just waiting to speak, but actually loving to connect. She's the woman who hears his vision and asks, "And what would that feel like?" She listens to his frustration and says, "What do you think that's trying to teach you?" She doesn't shut down conflict. She navigates it with grace, inviting understanding instead of blame. And because of that, every interaction with her feels like growth. Even their arguments are better, more honest, more constructive, because the foundation isn't ego, it's expansion. And men feel that deeply, and they want more of her mind, more of her insight, more of her, because in her presence, they don't just feel heard, they feel awakened. Now here's a powerful truth that most people miss. You don't have to agree with a man to emotionally stimulate him. In fact, you often shouldn't, because the real magic happens in the friction, the healthy tension, the respectful differences that make every conversation feel like exploration. That's what keeps the spark alive. That's what keeps the connection growing, because sameness can become stale, but respectful contrast, that's fuel. And it's also an invitation for him to rise, not to prove something, but to explore, to engage, to elevate. And the woman who becomes his emotional and intellectual partner in that journey, she's not replaceable, she's essential. She becomes the one he turns to when the world feels shallow, when the noise is too loud, when he wants something real. And that's not just attraction, that's addiction. Now, if this is resonating with you, if you've ever been the woman who lights up a man's mind and heart, but didn't realize how powerful that actually is, this is your moment. If you're ready to embrace that part of yourself, the part that asks questions, that listens deeply, that inspires growth just by being curious, then own it. That is your gift. That is your power. You don't need to chase. You don't need to perform. You are the experience he's craving. And if you're feeling this video, if it's lighting you up and giving you new insight, don't keep it to yourself. Like it right now. And drop number 1 in the comments so I know you're here with me. Part of this tribe of women who are stepping into something deeper, more magnetic, and more real. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started. And the next layer we explore will take this emotional connection to a whole new level. Let's keep going. 5. Mystery and independence. The magnetic pull of a complete woman. There's something utterly spellbinding about a woman who doesn't orbit around anyone but herself, who walks into a room not to be seen, but because she has somewhere to be. That kind of self-contained energy, that grounded presence, creates an invisible current that pulls men in before she even speaks. Because while the world often teaches women that they must be available, eager, and endlessly accommodating to keep a man's interest, the truth is far more powerful and far more dangerous in the most delicious way. A man becomes emotionally addicted to a woman Not when she gives him her every moment, her every thought, her entire world, but when she lets him into hers, piece by piece, like a slow-burning revelation he can never quite predict. It's the mystery, the space, the sense that there are entire oceans inside her he's only begun to explore. That intrigue doesn't come from playing games. It comes from living a full, beautiful life that doesn't pause just because someone new arrives. A woman who knows who she is, who nurtures her passions, her friendships, her joy, not as a strategy, but as a truth, is magnetic beyond measure. Because in her presence, he feels both drawn in and challenged. Not challenged like resistance, but like an invitation to match her depth, to rise to meet her where she already is. And that's the secret. Men don't fall for women who need them to fill a void. They fall for women who are whole, who are full of their own energy, and who offer connection, not out of lack, but out of abundance. That difference is subtle, but it's everything. Independence is intoxicating when it's quiet, steady, and unapologetic. It shows up when she doesn't rearrange her life to please him, but she welcomes him into it on her own terms. It reveals itself in the way she maintains her rituals, her routines, her commitments, even as love begins to bloom. And that's what makes him lean in further, because he knows she's not waiting for someone to complete her story. She's already the author. And that creates mystery, not because she's hiding anything, but because she's not performing. She doesn't narrate every emotion, every detail, every need. She allows space. She lets things unfold. She reveals herself in layers. And in doing so, she awakens the part of him that loves to pursue. This is not about manipulation. It's about rhythm, flow, the natural magnetism that comes from being so deeply rooted in who you are that others can't help but want to know more. And that mystery, it doesn't have to be dramatic or secretive. Sometimes it's just the way she smiles and doesn't explain why. The way she leaves space in a conversation for him to wonder, to imagine, to ask. The way she doesn't always text first, not out of strategy, but because she's busy living. Men crave that feeling, not knowing everything, not having it all right away, not being the center of someone else's universe. Because here's the paradox no one talks about. The more completely a woman immerses herself in her own life, the more deeply a man wants to be part of it. She becomes not a possession, but a portal into a different frequency, a higher standard, a more exciting way of loving. Her independence signals something primal to his subconscious. This woman chooses me, but she doesn't need me to be complete. And that choice, that's what makes it real. Because when someone needs you to feel whole, it creates pressure. But when someone is whole on their own and still invites you into that wholeness, that creates desire. And desire, when it's fed by freedom, rather than dependency, becomes an unstoppable force. Mystery is amplified by boundaries. A woman who doesn't always explain herself, who says no without apology, who respects her time and expects others to do the same. That's not cold, that's compelling, because it shows she values herself first. And men respond to that energy like gravity. It grounds them, it excites them, it keeps them guessing not about her feelings, but about what new part of her they'll get to discover next. And in that discovery, emotional addiction begins to take root, because now being around her isn't about repetition, it's about revelation. He can't predict what she'll say, how she'll think, what new adventure she'll lead him into. She becomes a source of novelty, and the brain loves it releases dopamine, the chemical of reward, of anticipation, of craving. And that's exactly what keeps him coming back. Not just for attention, but for stimulation. He's not addicted to drama. He's addicted to the emotional expansion she brings into his life, simply by being herself. A woman who maintains independence also allows space in the relationship for growth. She doesn't merge completely. She doesn't make her world revolve around his. She holds her center, and because of that, he has room to breathe, to reflect, to want. And that wanting, that moment where he feels her absence, just enough to remember how much he values her presence, that's where true emotional bonding strengthens. Most people fear distance, thinking it creates disconnection. But in truth, the right amount of space creates tension, healthy tension, desire-building tension. And the woman who knows how to move with that rhythm, who allows ebb and flow, instead of forcing closeness at all times, becomes unforgettable. Her love feels like air, never too much, never too little, always just enough to leave him needing more. And here's the twist. Her independence doesn't make her distant, it makes her more loving, because when she chooses to give, It's not out of duty. It's out of genuine desire. And he feels that. He feels when her attention is a gift, not a transaction. He feels when her affection is inspired, not required. And it makes every moment with her feel sacred. Women like this don't just attract, they transform. They become the catalyst for a man to rise into his highest self, not because she tells him to, but because being around her challenges his soul to grow, and he accepts that challenge with open arms, because he knows he's lucky to be in her orbit. He knows she's not waiting to be rescued. She's too busy building something beautiful, and he wants to be part of that, not and as a savior, but as a witness, a co-creator, a man who's finally met a woman who doesn't shrink or sacrifice to make love work. She stands and he stands taller next to her. That's the true magic of mystery and independence. It doesn't push love away. It deepens it. It doesn't intimidate the right man. It awakens him. And once that dynamic is established, it creates a bond so unique, so dynamic, so alive, that the relationship becomes a living, breathing journey, not a static structure. And in that journey, emotional addiction isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Because who wouldn't want to keep discovering someone who's already discovered herself? 6. The comfort challenge. Dynamic, the sweet spot of emotional growth. Every deeply rooted emotional bond, one that lasts, one that evolves, one that becomes addictive in the most sacred way, is built on a beautiful dynamic paradox, the balance between comfort and challenge. This dance is the essence of emotional magnetism, the quiet current running underneath the surface of all irresistible relationships. And it's where true emotional addiction takes root in a man's heart. Because comfort alone is not enough. It creates peace, yes, but peace without tension turns to boredom, and challenge without comfort, that creates chaos. Desire maybe, but not devotion. But the woman who masters the rhythm of both, the woman who knows how to be his soft place to land, and the fire that makes him rise, she becomes unforgettable. She becomes necessary. Because here's the secret few ever realize. Men don't fall for women who only make them feel good. They fall for women who make them feel more alive. And aliveness isn't static. It's electric. It needs safety to root and challenge to grow. Comfort in this sacred context is emotional safety. It's the way she responds when he's tired, defeated, uncertain. It's her stillness in his storm. The way she doesn't flinch when he shows his underbelly. It's the way she believes in the goodness of his heart, even when he forgets it himself. That kind of comfort becomes a healing space, a container for real connection. But it's not passive. It doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior or overgiving until she disappears. It's strong, it's clear, it's full of compassion, without losing integrity. And men, they crave this deeply. They may never say it, but they feel it when it's there, and ache when it's gone. But here's where the magic deepens. Comfort alone creates dependence, while challenge sparks transformation. A man becomes emotionally addicted, not just to the woman who soothes him, but to the woman who awakens him, who sees more in him than he sees in himself, who doesn't coddle his fears, but calls him forward gently, wisely, and with love. It's the way she says, "I know you can handle this," when he's doubting. The way she holds him accountable without shaming. The way she speaks truth with such clarity that he can't help but respect her even when it stings. And he grows because of her, with her, for her. This is not control. It's not criticism. It's sacred challenge. The kind that makes a man reflect, evolve, and rise, because he doesn't want to lose the woman who makes him feel like his best self. She is his mirror and his muse, his shelter and his edge. She helps him feel safe enough to rest and strong enough to reach. And that duality, it's rare, it's powerful, it creates emotional gravity. Think of the way a man remembers a woman who held him when he was grieving, then later told him with steady conviction, "You can't stay here forever." That's the kind of love that leaves fingerprints on the soul. That's the kind of bond that outlasts the noise of temporary pleasure, because it's rooted in truth, in presence, in the deep desire to grow together, not just coast. And when this comfort challenge dynamic is nurtured with grace, it becomes a rhythm, a heartbeat between two people who truly see one another. One moment she's soft and silent, rubbing his back while he processes a loss. The next she's looking him dead in the eye saying, "You're bigger than this fear. What would your future self do right now?" That's not confusion, that's mastery. It shows she isn't stuck in a single version of herself. She can flow, adapt, intuit what's needed, not from mood swings, but from emotional intelligence. And that adaptability, it keeps the connection fresh, alive, layered. Because let's be honest, relationships die in predictability, but they thrive in rhythm, and rhythm requires both rest and movement. That's what comfort and challenge are. They are the inhale and exhale of intimacy, the pulse of growth. And a man who experiences this dynamic with a woman doesn't just enjoy her, he evolves with her. He steps into new levels of maturity, awareness, and purpose. Simply by being in her presence, she becomes the gentle voice he hears when he wants to give up, the standard he remembers when he wants to settle, the softness he returns to when the world gets hard. She doesn't demand perfection. She inspires progress. She doesn't shame his wounds. She honors his healing. And in doing so, she becomes the only person he feels safe being weak around and strong for. That contrast is the key. It's what separates a fleeting connection from a lifelong imprint. Because every man has moments where he wants to retreat, numb out, collapse. But when he has a woman who sees his power in his pain and responds, not with fear but with wisdom, he learns to stay open, to stay engaged, to choose her again and again. And that choosing, that repeated return, is the heart of emotional addiction. Not because he can't live without her, but because he doesn't want to imagine living less, because he didn't grow with her. She becomes synonymous with transformation, with intimacy, with self-realization. And it's not because she fixed him, it's because she walked beside him as he remembered who he was meant to be. That kind of love isn't loud, but it's unforgettable. It doesn't rush, but it's undeniable. It doesn't play small, and it doesn't play games. And here's the most important part. She holds that same standard for herself. She gives herself comfort when she's hurting. She challenges herself when she's stuck. She doesn't need a man to validate her, but she welcomes him into her evolution. And in that invitation, she offers him something no one else does, the chance to become better together. That kind of intimacy, that balance, that co-elevation, it's sacred, it's rare, and it's exactly why a man doesn't just want to stay. He wants to rise, and rise, and rise. Now, if this journey we've been on in this video has stirred something in you, if you're beginning to see your own power, not just to attract love, but to shape it, to elevate it, to transform it, then this is your moment. If you felt seen, expanded, awakened by what we've shared, do me one small favor. Tap that like button and drop a number 1 in the comments below so I know this message reached your heart. I want to know who's here. I want to know which part of your soul lit up. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because this journey into high-level love, emotional magnetism, and feminine mastery is only just beginning. You belong here. You're ready. And what's coming next will take us even deeper into the kind of connection that doesn't just attract men, it changes lives. Until then, keep showing up as the powerful, grounded, emotionally intelligent woman you were born to be. So now, here we are at the edge of something deeper. You've seen how emotional addiction in men isn't about seduction in the shallow sense, but about resonance. It's about creating a space that very few women ever access, not because it's hidden, but because it's sacred. It's about understanding that the strongest pull between two souls is born not out of need, but out of reflection, growth, and emotional awakening. The kind of woman a man becomes emotionally addicted to is not the one who gives everything, nor the one who withholds. She is the one who sees, who listens beyond the words, who speaks into his potential, not with pressure, but with unwavering belief. She doesn't lose herself in love, she becomes more of herself, and in doing so, she invites him to do the same. That invitation is powerful. It doesn't beg for closeness, it creates it. It doesn't manipulate, it magnetizes. And the bond that forms through this kind of conscious connection, it transcends attraction. It becomes devotion. Emotional addiction, in its highest form, is not about dependency. It's about alignment. It's about knowing that the version of yourself you become in someone's presence feels so deeply real, so fully accepted, so beautifully challenged, that leaving would feel like walking away from the best parts of who you are. That's the mark of a relationship rooted in something real, something rare, something that doesn't just hold space for love. It builds love, shapes it, deepens it, and carries it forward day by day, breath by breath. So if you find yourself drawn to this path, to this level of emotional intelligence and soulful relating, know that it's not reserved for the few. It's available to you right now, in the way you see, in the way you speak, in the way you love.
The secret has never been about being more. It's always been about being real. And the moment you choose to be that woman, the grounded, intuitive, luminous version of yourself, the right man won't just be attracted to you. He'll feel pulled, kept, connected, addicted in the most sacred sense of the word. You won't just be the woman he wants. You'll be the woman he remembers always.
Let me ask you something that might shake the very foundation of what you've believed about attraction. Have you been told that looking flawless, dressing to the nines, or chasing the perfect body will make you irresistible? That if you just looked a little more like her, then maybe, just maybe, he would finally notice you? Here's the truth. No one tells you. Attraction is not built in your mirror. It's built in your mind, your energy, your habits. And that's where the real magic begins. In this world of endless scrolling and quick swipes, it's easy to fall into the trap of superficial seduction. But the women who truly captivate, men who leave them wondering, who is she and why can't I stop thinking about her, aren't necessarily the ones with the most perfect eyeliner or the trendiest outfits. No, they are the women who embody something deeper, something electric, something real. Here's the problem. Most women are unknowingly giving away their power. They try to attract men by overgiving, overperforming, or overthinking, not realizing they're dulling their most magnetic force, their authentic self. So what if I told you there's a radically different approach? One that doesn't require pretending to be someone else, playing mind games, or exhausting yourself trying to keep his interest. What if the habits that truly attract high-quality, emotionally intelligent men are already within your reach, waiting to be activated? In this video, we're not talking about surface-level tips. We're diving deep into the 6 magnetic habits that pull men toward you like gravity without you having to chase, impress, or perform. These habits are rooted in psychology, authenticity, and feminine self-respect. And once you start living them, you won't just become more attractive to men. You'll become absolutely irresistible to the right kind of men. Sound powerful? It is. Because this isn't just about love. It's about becoming a woman who commands it effortlessly from a place of wholeness and strength. Each habit in this video is a key unlocking a different layer of attraction: emotional connection, curiosity, admiration, desire, and deep respect. The kind of attraction that lasts. The kind that doesn't fade after the first kiss. The kind that makes a man lean in again and again because your presence simply feels different. So stay with me until the end, because the final habit is the one most women miss entirely, and it's the glue that holds all the others together. Are you ready to stop guessing what makes a man stay and start embodying it? Let's dive into the secrets that change the entire game of attraction starting now. Unradiate positive energy. There's something spellbinding about a woman who walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere without even trying. You've seen her before, haven't you? She's not necessarily the loudest or the flashiest. She doesn't demand attention, and yet every head turns. Men glance up. Conversations pause for just a beat longer. What is it about her? The answer is both simple and profound. She radiates positive energy. This isn't about plastering on a fake smile or pretending to be happy 24/7. It's a deeper, richer glow and inner warmth that pulls people in. It's the softness in her eyes, the way she listens like she actually cares, the lightness in her laughter, and the way she brings joy into the most mundane moments. Her energy whispers rather than shouts, and yet it echoes. Men feel something shift when they're around her, and they can't quite explain why they don't want to leave. So ask yourself this: what kind of energy are you radiating? Because attraction doesn't start with your lips or your hips. It starts with your presence. In a world drenched in stress and cynicism, positive energy feels like a breath of fresh air, like sunlight in a dimly lit room. Most women don't realize that enthusiasm is one of their sexiest traits. When you light up from within, when you speak passionately about something you love, when you laugh with your whole soul instead of holding back, that is when your energy becomes unforgettable. Scientific studies even back this up. Emotions are contagious. Literally, when you express genuine happiness, your mirror neurons activate similar emotions in others, meaning the way you feel has a direct impact on how he feels when he's with you. Think about that. When you carry joy, curiosity, and warmth, you give him an experience, an himself that's brighter, more alive. And that experience becomes associated with you. Suddenly, it's not just that he likes you, it's that he likes how he feels when he's with you. That's powerful. That's magnetic. But here's the mistake so many women make. They think positivity means perfection. They believe they have to hide their sadness, their anger, their anxiety, or pretend that everything is fine even when it's not. But real positive energy doesn't come from suppressing your truth.
It comes from choosing your response to life. It's about resilience, not performance. A woman who radiates positive energy isn't someone who's never been hurt. She's someone who's chosen not to stay broken. She's someone who feels deeply, but still shows up with grace. She doesn't sugarcoat reality, but she moves through it with hope. She might cry, but she doesn't let bitterness harden her heart. And that softness wrapped in strength is where her magic lives. Men are drawn to women who carry emotional vitality. Think about it. When you meet someone who's bitter, who complains constantly, who sees the worst in everything, how does that energy feel in your body? Heavy, draining. But when you meet someone who lifts the room, who finds humor in discomfort, who celebrates even the small wins, your heart opens. You feel better just by being around them. Now imagine a man meeting you and thinking, damn, I just feel good when I'm with her. That's when he starts calling you even when he's busy. That's when he finds excuses to be near you, to talk to you, to invite you into more of his world. Because your presence becomes a form of emotional oxygen. This doesn't mean you have to perform happiness or be high energy all the time. Your energy can be soft and still powerful. You don't need to be bubbly, you just need to be present. Positive energy also shows up in how you engage with others. Are you curious? Do you ask thoughtful questions not to impress, but because you actually want to understand him? Do you listen with your whole body, or are you waiting for your turn to speak? When you're truly present, people feel seen by you. And being seen is a deeply seductive experience. For a man to feel understood, to feel like he doesn't have to perform around you, is rare and magnetic. When your energy is clean, when you're not carrying resentment, gossip, or judgment, you become safe to open up to. And let's be honest, emotional safety is the new sexy. In a world that often rewards sarcasm over sincerity, your kindness becomes an act of rebellion. Your warmth becomes a revolution. The energy you bring into a space can either build intimacy or block it, and you get to choose. Are you choosing habits that charge your energy or drain it? Because what you consume online, emotionally, physically feeds your energy. If you're constantly surrounded by negative influences, scrolling through drama, comparing yourself on social media, soaking up gossip, that will dim your light. But if you're intentional, if you cultivate gratitude, move your body, create beauty, laugh, dream, rest, pray, dance, love, you begin to glow in a way that no makeup can replicate, and men notice. They may not know why, but they'll know they want to be around you. Your energy becomes your signature scent, unforgettable, lingering, addictive. It's also important to understand that positive energy doesn't mean being passive. In fact, it takes strength to hold joy, in a world that constantly tests your peace. When you handle challenges with composure, when you look for solutions rather than blame, you demonstrate emotional maturity, and that's incredibly attractive. Men pay attention to how you react when life doesn't go your way. Do you spiral or do you recalibrate? Do you lash out or do you breathe through it? Positive energy shows up in your ability to respond instead of react, and that kind of calm, grounded presence. It makes a man want to lean in, not pull away. Another overlooked expression of radiant energy is playfulness. The kind of spontaneous, flirty, light-hearted fun that reminds him of who he was before life got heavy. Men are deeply attracted to women who can play, who can tease, laugh, be silly, break tension, and create levity. You become his escape from the pressure, not another source of it. Your ability to turn even an ordinary coffee date into a memorable moment isn't about the place or the price, it's about the feeling. Enthusiasm is sexy, passion is irresistible. Your zest for life becomes the spark that lights his desire. And guess what? You don't have to fake it. You just have to reconnect with what already lights you up. What makes you feel alive? What makes you lose track of time? Do more of that. When you live a life that excites you, you automatically become exciting to others. It's not about putting on a show. It's about living turned on to your own life. That quote's to the feminine edge. That's what keeps him curious. That's what makes him miss you. But here's something even more powerful. Your positive energy doesn't just affect him. It changes you. It makes dating less exhausting. It makes rejection less personal. It gives you the resilience to stay soft in a hard world. It helps you enjoy the journey instead of obsessing over outcomes. It puts the joy back in connection. You stop needing to chase attention because you realize you are the experience. You are the vibe and he feels it whether he can name it or not. So if you've ever wondered why some women seem to effortlessly attract quality men without trying too hard, this is your answer. It's not about being prettier. It's about being more alive, more engaged, more open, more grounded, more you. Real attraction is energetic. It's visceral. It's emotional. And when you begin to radiate from the inside out, you become unforgettable. Your presence becomes a place men want to return to. Not because you begged for it, but because your energy made them feel something they can't get anywhere else. That is the power of positive energy. That is the first step to becoming magnetically attractive, and that is just the beginning. 2. Practice authentic communication. There's something undeniably attractive about a woman who knows how to express herself with clarity, warmth, and emotional precision. A woman who doesn't play games, doesn't hint or test or manipulate, but instead speaks her truth with kindness and confidence. Authentic communication is a form of power, one that far too many underestimate. And yet it's one of the greatest turn-ons for emotionally intelligent men. In a world where so many people are afraid to say what they really mean, where conversations are laced with expectations, subtext, and confusion, a woman who communicates with honesty and directness becomes a breath of fresh air. You want to know what really makes a man feel safe, respected, and drawn to you, on a level that goes beyond physical attraction. It's when he knows you're being real with him. When he doesn't have to second-guess your tone, decode your texts, or walk on eggshells because he's not sure what you really want. Men crave that clarity. It helps them relax. It gives them permission to open up, to trust you, to invest in the connection without the fear of emotional whiplash. And you don't need to be a master communicator to do this. You just need to show up as yourself, with a willingness to share what's true for you, without using guilt, shame, or drama to get your way. This kind of communication isn't cold or robotic. It's filled with emotion, vulnerability, playfulness, and passion, but it's clean. It doesn't leave him guessing or feeling manipulated. And when a man experiences that kind of communication, it's unforgettable. Authentic communication starts with knowing what you want. That sounds simple, but most people haven't even given themselves permission to explore that question. What do you want in a relationship, in an experience, in a moment? When you know your truth, you can speak it. When you don't, you end up twisting yourself into what you think he wants to hear, diluting your own voice. But here's the truth. Men don't fall in love with women who shapeshift to please them. They fall in love with women who are unapologetically themselves, who know how to say, here's what lights me up, here's what matters to me, here's what I value, what about you? That kind of honesty opens the door to real intimacy, and it makes a man feel like he's not just dating your performance, he's being invited into your world. Real attraction happens when there's real emotional safety, and that begins with honest words. And here's the twist. The more real you are, the more deeply he'll connect to you. Not in spite of your flaws, but because of them. When you show up fully, he gets to relax and stop performing too. It's in those unscripted, honest moments that emotional bonds are formed. Authentic communication also means knowing how to receive as much as you give. Most women focus on expressing themselves, but they forget the listening side of connection. When a man speaks, do you truly hear him? Are you present? Are you listening to understand, or are you waiting to correct, defend, or prove something? Deep listening is magnetic. It creates a space where a man feels seen, not judged. It creates emotional intimacy faster than any grand gesture. And when you reflect his words back to him, when you validate his feelings and show curiosity about his world, it changes the entire dynamic. He starts to associate you with safety, with depth, with a place he can take off the armor. And once he feels safe with you, everything opens. He'll start sharing more. He'll want to know more about you. He'll invest more, because emotional safety is rare. And once a man feels it, he doesn't want to lose it. That's how powerful your communication can be. But let's go deeper. Authentic communication isn't just about being honest when things are going well. It's about how you handle tension, disagreement, or disappointment. This is where so many connections fall apart, because we've been taught to avoid conflict, to stay nice, or to explode when things build up too much. But a woman who can express discomfort or disagreement without turning it into drama, she's a unicorn. She's the woman men admire, respect, and want to stay with, because she knows how to have uncomfortable conversations with grace. She can say, hey, this didn't feel good to me, without needing to attack or shut down. She knows how to express hurt without turning it into punishment. She doesn't use the silent treatment. She doesn't try to make him guess. And you know what? That kind of maturity is sexy. It signals emotional intelligence. It shows him that you're not just a good time. You're someone he can build something real with. Because relationships aren't about avoiding conflict. They're about navigating it with love, honesty, and mutual respect. And when you show that you can do that, you stand out. Men notice, they remember, they trust. But here's another layer of this magnetic habit: appreciation. Sincere, specific, unexpected appreciation. Do you realize how rarely men are truly seen and celebrated? How often they hear what they're doing wrong, but not what they're doing right? A well-placed compliment, a thank you with depth, a moment of genuine admiration. It lands deep. It makes him feel like a hero, like he matters. And not in a superficial, egg-going way, but in a way that nourishes something primal inside him. When you appreciate a man, not just for what he gives you, but for who he is, you create an emotional reward system that draws him back in. It makes him want to give more, do more, be more, not because you asked him to, but because your energy makes him want to. Think about that. Your words can activate his best self. That's what authentic communication does. It invites him into a space where love can grow. It becomes a channel for connection, not a weapon for control. And when you use your voice to uplift, express, explore, and expand, rather than to manipulate or suppress, you become unforgettable. But let me be clear, this doesn't mean you don't set boundaries. On the contrary, authentic communication requires strong boundaries. You know what you're available for, and what you're not. And you express that without apology. You say no without guilt. You walk away from what doesn't feel aligned. And you do it without punishing or controlling anyone else. That self-respect expressed with grace is one of the most attractive things a woman can ever embody, because it shows you love yourself enough to protect your energy. And when a man sees that, he knows he has to earn his place in your life. Not through pressure, but through presence. Not through performance, but through partnership. That's what creates real intimacy. Not just sexual chemistry, but soul-level connection. And it all starts with the words you choose, the tone you use, the energy you bring to each interaction. Your communication is your bridge to the world. Build it strong, build it clear, and build it with heart. So beautiful soul, if this resonated with you, if you felt that shift, that spark, that little voice saying, yes, this is the kind of woman I want to be, then let it begin right here. Practice this habit. Let your words become sacred. Let your honesty become your power. And watch as the right men not only hear you but feel you, remember you, and respect you. If you're loving the vibe so far, go ahead and like this video, and comment number 1 below. If this habit resonated with you most, make sure to subscribe, so you don't miss the next irresistible secret in our series. Trust me, you'll want to hear what's coming next. 3. Build unshakable confidence. There is something magnetic, even hypnotic, about a woman who walks into a room and doesn't need to ask for permission to be seen. She doesn't chase attention. She doesn't beg for approval. She simply exists fully, unapologetically, and with a quiet certainty that tells the world, I know who I am. That's unshakable confidence. And it's not a performance. It's a presence, one that speaks louder than words, more clearly than perfume, and more powerfully than any curated outfit or filtered selfie. Real confidence doesn't come from what you look like. It comes from what you know about yourself. It's in the way you breathe, the way you move, the way you meet someone's eyes, and don't look away. It's the deep-rooted belief that your worth isn't up for negotiation. And when a woman walks with that kind of confidence, men feel it. They don't just notice her, they remember her. Confidence isn't about arrogance or dominance. It's not loud or overbearing. It's subtle, sexy, a slow-burning flame that makes a man wonder, what is it about her? And the answer is simple. It's how she holds herself, the way she owns her story, the way she's not afraid of her own desires. Confidence doesn't mean never being insecure. It means you don't let insecurity drive your life. And men are deeply attracted to this kind of emotional grounding. It signals maturity. It shows that you're not looking to get completed, or rescued, or constantly reassured. You are your own source of validation. Bring a full cup to the table, and that makes you irresistible. Not because you need nothing, but because you're not willing to settle for anything that doesn't match your value. Confidence lives
in the tiny details.
The way you accept a compliment without deflecting. The way you say no without explaining. The way you choose your own pleasure, your own pace, your own path, without apologizing. It shows up in your ability to walk away when something doesn't serve you, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. It shows up when you trust your intuition, even if others don't understand. When you live from this place, men start responding to you differently. You're no longer chasing love. You're choosing it. You're no longer hoping to be chosen. You are the chooser. And that energy, that's what draws emotionally available. Mature men closer because they see in you what they've been waiting for. A woman who is complete, who's done the work, who holds herself to a higher standard, not to prove anything, but because that's just who she is. Confidence also shows up in how you handle rejection. It doesn't crush you. It doesn't make you question your worth, because you understand that not everyone is meant to see your value, and that's okay. You're not for everyone. You're for the ones who get it. Confidence is what allows you to stay open without being desperate, to stay soft without being weak, to be vulnerable without losing your power. It's the foundation that holds every other habit in place. And here's the thing, confidence is not something you're born with. It's something you build every time you honor your boundaries, every time you speak up for yourself, every time you make a decision based on what feels right for you instead of what others expect. Every time you choose growth over comfort, every time you forgive yourself for being human, confidence grows in the soil of self-respect. It deepens with every small act of integrity, and it becomes unshakable when you stop outsourcing your worth to the opinions of others. That kind of inner security is rare, and men feel it. It calms their nervous system. It draws them in without pressure. It makes them curious, because so many women lead with their fears, their doubts, their past wounds. But you lead with your wholeness, and that's different. That's unforgettable. Confidence is also how you hold space for others without losing yourself. It's the ability to be generous without being self-sacrificing, to be loving without being a doormat. It's knowing that your needs matter, that your voice has power, that your presence alone is a gift, and not everyone deserves access to it. A confident woman isn't afraid to walk away from someone who doesn't treat her well. She doesn't cling. She doesn't beg. She releases with grace, with peace, because she knows what's meant for her won't have to be forced. And if someone can't see her worth, that's not a reflection of her. It's a reflection of them. And while this might sound fierce, the truth is confidence is soft. It's welcoming. It's warm. It's the kind of energy that says, I'm here, and I don't need you to like me in order to feel okay about myself. That freedom is magnetic. It makes people want to earn your trust, your time, your heart, because they can feel that it's sacred, that it's not given lightly. And that creates a beautiful kind of tension, the kind that makes men step up rather than coast. But here's where many women get stuck. They confuse confidence with perfection. They think they have to never cry, never doubt, never feel afraid. But true confidence embraces imperfection. It's the ability to say, yeah, I'm still figuring things out, and I still deserve love. I still deserve success. I still deserve joy. It's the refusal to shrink, the refusal to wait until you're enough to show up fully. It's messy, it's real, it's honest, and that's why it's so damn attractive. When you own your flaws, instead of hiding them, when you laugh at your mistakes, instead of beating yourself up, when you show up anyway, even when it's scary, that's when confidence becomes art. It becomes soul deep. It becomes magnetic, because you're no longer trying to be someone else. You're being them fully, fearlessly, freely. That's what real men fall in love with. Not the mask, not the performance, but the woman who's courageous enough to be seen. Confidence also allows you to shine without dimming others. You don't need to compete. You don't gossip. You don't compare, because you're rooted. You're grounded. You're in your own lane. You celebrate other women because you're not threatened by their beauty, their success, or their light. You know there's enough for everyone. And that makes you magnetic in a completely different way. Your confidence uplifts the room. It creates space, it inspires trust, and it makes people want to be around you. Not just men, but everyone. Because people can feel when you're at peace with yourself. They can feel when you like yourself. And they're drawn to that energy, like flowers to sunlight. But make no mistake, this kind of confidence is earned. It's not about faking it till you make it. It's about doing the inner work, healing the wounds, challenging the stories, choosing your worth every single day. And yes, some days it's harder than others, but you show up anyway. You keep choosing yourself. You keep becoming the woman you know you were born to be. And that journey, it's the most powerful thing you'll ever do. Because the moment you stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to shine, you step into a level of magnetism that changes everything. Not just in your love life, but in your friendships, your career, your joy. Because confidence isn't just about being desirable. It's about being unshakable. It's about being rooted so deeply in your own value that no rejection, no opinion, no outcome can shake you. That's when you stop playing small. That's when you stop settling. That's when you start attracting the kind of man who doesn't want to dim your light, but to rise beside it. Because confidence doesn't intimidate the right men. It inspires them. It calls them forward. And it invites them into a love that's based on mutual respect, not need, on freedom, not fear. So if you want to become magnetically attractive, start here. Start with you. Start with building the kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself because it's felt, seen, and remembered. Every room you enter, every conversation you hold, every love you attract. Confidence isn't the goal. It's the foundation. And with it, you become unstoppable. 4. Embrace
Emotional independence. Imagine this: a woman who smiles from a place of wholeness, not because someone filled her cup, but because her cup was never empty to begin with. A woman who welcomes love, but doesn't need it to feel complete. A woman who shares her life with someone not to fill a void, but to amplify a life that's already rich, already vibrant, already full. That's emotional independence. And it's one of the most intoxicating qualities a woman can embody. Because let's be honest, emotional neediness repels. It creates pressure. It whispers of insecurity, of dependency, of a woman waiting for a man to save her from her own life. But when a man meets a woman who is emotionally whole, who knows how to self-soothe, how to navigate her own storms, how to sit with discomfort without turning it into chaos, that woman becomes unforgettable. She is the calm within herself. She brings peace, not problems, joy, not drama, depth, not demands. She doesn't lose herself in love. She expands within it. Emotional independence doesn't mean closing off your heart. It doesn't mean pretending you don't care, suppressing your feelings, or living in emotional isolation. No, it means feeling everything deeply, richly, unapologetically, but knowing that your emotions are yours to regulate. You don't outsource your emotional world to someone else. You don't hand over your happiness and say, "Here, now it's your job to keep me okay." You hold yourself. You comfort yourself. You understand yourself. And from that place you can love another with open hands, instead of clenched fists. That's what makes emotional independence so magnetic. It signals safety. When a man knows that you're not going to crumble if he needs space, when he sees that you can handle conflict without falling apart, when he feels that your world doesn't collapse if he's not constantly validating you, that is incredibly attractive, because it means he can breathe around you. He can be human. He can have a bad day without fearing that it will shatter the relationship, and that kind of freedom that's rare. It's powerful. It's why men say, "I can be myself around her." Emotional independence allows love to flourish without fear. It creates space for desire, for curiosity, for real intimacy, not built on desperation, but on choice. Because you don't need him to fix you. You're not waiting for someone to rescue you from your loneliness. You've learned to enjoy your own company. You've learned how to sit in silence without panic. You've learned how to find peace inside yourself, not just in another's arms. And that inner peace is what makes your presence feel like home. So many women fear independence will make them too much, too intimidating, too self-sufficient. But the truth is, the right man finds this irresistible. He doesn't want to be your emotional babysitter. He wants a partner, an equal, someone who can dance in her own energy and invite him to join. Not someone who clings, who begs, who panics at the first sign of distance. Independence says, "I want you, but I don't need you to breathe." That difference creates attraction. It makes your love feel like an invitation, not an obligation. Emotional independence also reveals itself in how you handle rejection and disappointment. When things don't go your way, do you collapse? Do you lash out? Do you spiral into self-doubt? Or do you breathe, reflect, recalibrate, and rise? That emotional maturity tells a man everything he needs to know. Because let's face it, life will challenge both of you. Emotions will come, triggers will surface, but your ability to stay rooted in yourself, to soothe your own wounds, to communicate without blame, that's the glue that holds love together. When you show a man that you don't fear your own feelings, that you're not afraid of sadness or anger or uncertainty, you show him that you won't fear his either. And that's when he starts opening up. That's when vulnerability flows. Because emotional independence isn't just sexy, it's safe, it's strong, it's the soil where real connection can grow. And you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be aware. Aware of your emotions, willing to sit with them, willing to take responsibility for your experience, instead of projecting it onto someone else. Willing to say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I need, and I know how to take care of myself, if that need isn't met. That kind of self-trust changes everything. It frees you from anxiety, it frees you from waiting, it frees you from codependent patterns that make love feel like survival. And when you free yourself, you free the relationship. A man no longer feels like your emotional lifeline. He becomes your companion, your mirror, your co-creator, not your parent, not your escape route, not your only source of peace. And here's the secret most women don't know. Emotional independence actually increases intimacy. It creates the space where longing can build, where presence feels sacred, where time apart becomes anticipation rather than fear. It keeps your connection fresh, alive, and rooted in desire instead of dependency, because nothing kills attraction faster than neediness, and nothing grows it faster than freedom. But how do you build this kind of independence? It starts with knowing who you are when no one's looking. What brings you joy? What gives you peace? What fills you up without needing someone else to provide it? The more you discover yourself, the more you fall in love with your own essence, the less you need someone to complete you. And when you stop searching for completion, you become complete. That completeness radiates. It makes a man want to join your orbit, because he can feel that you're not asking him to carry your happiness. You're inviting him to share in it. That shift changes the entire dynamic. You're no longer approaching love from lack. You're approaching it from abundance, from confidence, from power. And it shows in your boundaries, in your presence, in your silence, in the way you say, I love spending time with you, but I also love my own time. That self-assurance is intoxicating. It makes your energy feel lighter, easier, more playful, because you're not gripping, you're not controlling, you're allowing. And in that allowance, you create safety. You become the woman he doesn't want to lose. Not because you threatened him, but because your energy feels too good to walk away from. Emotional independence isn't just about holding yourself together. It's about dancing with life, even when no one is watching. It's about building a world so beautiful that someone else wants to step into it. Not because they have to, but because they want to. And when a man feels that invitation, when he senses that your love is free, expansive, real, he'll lean in, not out of obligation, but out of awe. So if this part of your journey speaks to your soul, if something inside you whispers, yes, this is the kind of woman I'm becoming, then let it be known. Embrace your emotional independence. Let your presence say, I'm here to love you, but I don't need to lose myself to do it. That's magnetic. That's rare. That's real. If this message resonates with your heart, if you're feeling the truth in your body, go ahead and like this video, and comment number 1 below, so I know you're walking this path with me. And make sure you subscribe, so you don't miss what's coming next, because habit number 5 will unlock a layer of attraction most women never tap into, and it just might be the missing piece you've been searching for. 5. Cultivate a passion-filled life. There's something unmistakably captivating about a woman who's turned on by her own life. A woman whose eyes light up when she talks about what excites her, who moves through the world with purpose, with intention, with desire, not just for love, but for living. When a woman is immersed in her own passions, when she wakes up curious about the day ahead, when she invests her energy into things that make her feel alive, she becomes magnetic in a way that no external beauty ever could. Passion is a flame. It glows from within. And when a man encounters that kind of energy, he feels it instantly. He's drawn to it not just because it's attractive,
but because it signals depth. It suggests that there's more to explore, more to discover, more life behind those eyes. And that intrigue, that's what keeps him coming back. A passion-filled life isn't just a lifestyle, it's a mindset. It's the decision to not wait for someone to give you permission to feel joy. It's the choice to pursue what lights you up, whether or not anyone else joins you. It's in the way you throw yourself into your art, your work, your creativity, your travel, your books, your dreams, not to impress, but to express. And that expression, it's electric, because so many people are simply existing, going through the motions, numbing, settling. But when you are lit from the inside, when you speak with conviction about something you love, when you lose track of time doing what makes your soul hum, that's when your energy becomes unforgettable. That's when you stop chasing love and start attracting it effortlessly. Because love gravitates toward light, and passion is pure light. It's not about being busy. It's not about hustling or overloading your schedule. It's about being in love with your life, about having something that excites you so deeply you can't wait to share it, or simply bask in it on your own. When you cultivate passion, you stop asking a man to be your entire world, and you invite him to be a part of a world that's already vibrant and full. That difference changes everything. It shifts the energy from clingy to curious, from pressure to pleasure. It gives him space to breathe, and space to miss you, because he sees that your life is already rich with meaning, already lit up with beauty, already moving with momentum. And instead of being responsible for your happiness, he gets to be a witness to it, a participant in it, a contributor to it. And that feels so much better for both of you. Passion also creates polarity. It sharpens your feminine energy, because it puts you in your body, in your feelings, in your now. When you're painting, dancing, dreaming, planning, writing, building, exploring, whatever it is that sets your soul on fire, you drop into your essence. You become more radiant, more grounded, more magnetic, without even trying. And when a busy man meets a woman in that state, she doesn't feel like a role or a stereotype. She feels alive, and aliveness is sexy. It's irresistible. It makes him want to understand you, explore you, be close to you, not because you're performing, but because your energy stirs something in him, something primal, something real. Passion gives you texture. It gives you color. It gives you a voice that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It invites a man to lean in and discover more, to ask questions, to listen deeper, to wonder what else you love, what else moves you, what else you've yet to share. And that curiosity, that's what builds connection. That's what deepens desire. And the beauty is your passion doesn't have to be productive. It doesn't need to make money, win awards, or go viral. It just has to move you. It just has to wake you up, pull you in, crack you open. It might be something you create, something you explore, something you pursue, something you feel deeply connected to. And the more you honor that part of you, the part that doesn't need permission to shine, the more you start to radiate a kind of confidence and contentment that no man can give you. Because it's not about him. It's about you, your desires, your creativity, your growth. And when you become the woman who doesn't abandon herself for love, who doesn't put her life on pause for a maybe, who keeps blooming, regardless of who's watching, that's when love finds you. Not because you needed it, but because you became a match for the kind of love that wants to join your fire, not extinguish it. Passion also sustains attraction over time. It keeps your conversations rich, your energy dynamic, your life evolving. Relationships stagnate when people stop growing, when they stop feeding their individuality, when everything becomes routine, predictable, and flat. But when both people bring their own passions, their own experiences, their own stories to the table, the relationship becomes a place of expansion, not contraction. You remain interesting to one another, because you're both still interested in life. So if you want to be unforgettable, not just at first, but over the long haul, keep evolving, keep pursuing what you love, keep choosing yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of self-honoring, because your passion is your power. It's what makes you glow. And when you glow, the right man will see you, not as a placeholder, not as a prize, but as a woman of substance, a woman who brings her own fire and invites him into the heat. Don't wait for someone else to make your life exciting. Make it exciting now. Fill it with beauty, with mystery, with the things that turn you on to being alive. And when you do, love won't be far behind. 6. Set boundaries through self-care. There is a quiet, commanding power in a woman who knows her limits, a woman who protects her time, her energy, her emotional peace, not with walls, but with discernment. A woman who doesn't just talk about self-worth, but embodies it in the way she moves through the world. That power, it begins with boundaries. And the kind of boundaries we're talking about here aren't cold, rigid, or defensive. They're warm, graceful, and rooted in self-care. Because at the deepest level, boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping you in alignment. They're a reflection of how well you care for yourself, how deeply you understand your needs, and how unapologetically you're willing to honor them. And men feel this. They notice not just in what you say but in what you allow. They notice whether your words match your actions, whether you prioritize yourself or abandon yourself in the name of love. And when you show up with clear, loving, consistent boundaries, you instantly stand out, because most women haven't been taught to own their no. They've been taught to overgive, to shrink, to please, to accommodate. But a woman with boundaries, she's different. She says yes, with her whole heart, or not at all. She protects her peace, like a queen, protects her crown. She doesn't make herself available to anyone who doesn't treat her like she's sacred. And that level of self-respect, it's magnetic. It tells a man, I'm not here to be rescued. I'm here to be respected. Self-care isn't always soft. Sometimes it's fierce. Sometimes it's saying, I won't tolerate that tone. Sometimes it's walking away from the date that's draining your energy. Sometimes it's letting a phone ring, because your mental space matters more than responding on cue. And these small acts, these sacred pauses, these intentional choices, send powerful signals. They say I matter. My time is valuable. My emotional safety is non-negotiable. And the men who are ready for a real connection, they will rise to meet you there. Because high-quality men want to know your standards. It gives them structure. It gives them direction. It shows them how to win your trust, not by jumping through hoops, but by respecting the sacredness of your energy. Boundaries through self-care also create emotional safety for both people. Because when a man knows where you begin and end, when he knows what's okay and what's not, he can relax. There's no guessing game, no walking on eggshells, just clarity. And clarity creates trust. You don't need to yell or explain yourself 20 times. You simply live your boundaries, calmly, consistently. You reinforce them with action, not argument. And the right people will feel drawn to that, because it's not about control. It's about integrity. It's about alignment. When you take care of yourself, when you prioritize rest, nourishment, solitude, joy, you don't need to demand respect. You radiate it, and your presence begins to speak louder than any words ever could. You become the woman whose yes means something, because her no is clear. You become the woman whose presence feels like peace, not because life is perfect, but because you've learned how to protect your light. And men, real men, want to be in the orbit of that kind of woman, because she doesn't just give love, she embodies love for herself, for her standards, for her future. Boundaries are also what filter your connections. When you have them, you no longer attract or tolerate the kind of men who want access without effort, attention without consistency, intimacy without respect. Your boundaries become your energetic bouncer. They say if you can't come correct, don't come at all. And while that might scare off the ones who were never serious, it draws in the ones who are, the ones who want to invest, the ones who are looking for a woman with substance. And that substance, it's not found in your looks, or your clothes, or your ability to play it cool. It's found in the way you treat yourself when no one's watching. It's found in your routines, your rituals, your recovery. How do you handle stress? How do you protect your heart? How do you rebuild after being disappointed? These are the things that shape your essence, and boundaries are the container that keep that essence safe. You become the woman who doesn't beg to be chosen. You choose yourself every single time. And that energy, that devotion to your own well-being, it changes the way men experience you, because you're no longer accessible to everyone. And when you're not accessible to everyone, you become more valuable to the right ones. You don't text back just to be polite. You don't entertain nonsense because you're afraid of being alone. You don't let anyone sit at your table unless they've brought something real. Boundaries also show up in how you manage your time. How often do we say yes when we mean no? How often do we stretch ourselves thin to meet everyone else's needs while abandoning our own? When you start saying no to what drains you, you create space for what feeds you. And in that space you become more magnetic, because a woman who honors her own time doesn't need to chase anyone. Her silence speaks volumes. Her distance feels different. She's not punishing you. She's protecting herself. And that energy, that sacred self-containment, it turns heads. It stirs something in the masculine that says, I have to earn her. And not out of fear, but out of reverence, out of respect. Self-care is also about environment. The space you create around you is a reflection of the space you hold within you. Is your home a sanctuary or a source of stress? Is your digital life full of comparison and noise, or inspiration and alignment? Every choice you make is a reflection of how you value yourself. And when a man steps into your world, whether physically or emotionally. He feels it. He feels whether you take care of your body, your heart, your soul. He feels whether you've done the work to be whole. And that wholeness, it doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It simply is. So many women are exhausted from overgiving. They're burnt out from trying to hold everything together, to be everything to everyone. But here's your permission slip. You don't have to prove your worth by abandoning yourself. You don't have to say yes when your soul is screaming no. You don't have to be the cool girl who accepts less than she deserves. You get to say I love you, and I love me too. You get to walk away from what hurts. You get to slow down, to rest, to choose you. And when you do, you rise, you glow, you become unavailable to anything that dims your light, and you attract everything that nourishes it. So if you take nothing else from this habit, let it be this. Your boundaries are your birthright. They're not mean. They're not selfish. They're sacred. And the more you honor them, the more you'll attract people who do the same. If you've made it this far and something in your heart is saying, yes, I'm ready to start honoring myself this way, then I want to hear from you. Go ahead and like this video, and comment number 1 if this habit resonated with you the most. And don't forget to subscribe, so you never miss a new piece of this powerful journey, because next we're wrapping it all together. And trust me, the conclusion will give you a whole new lens on everything you've just learned. By now you've likely felt something shift, not just in your understanding of what attracts a man, but in the way you see yourself. Because the truth is, these 6 habits weren't created to help you become someone else. They were designed to bring you back to who you've always been beneath the noise. A woman of depth, of light, of power. A woman whose confidence doesn't need a spotlight to shine. A woman whose presence feels like a warm current, pulling others closer without a single word. These habits, radiating positive energy, practicing authentic communication, building unshakable confidence, embracing emotional independence, cultivating a passion-filled life, and setting boundaries through self-care, are not tricks. They're not strategies to get a man. They are the quiet, powerful architecture of a life that calls in love instead of chasing it. They are the behaviors of a woman who knows that magnetic attraction isn't something she forces. It's something she embodies. You see, when you stop seeking validation and start standing in your truth, everything changes. You stop trying to impress and start expressing. You stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. That shift, it's not just attractive, it's revolutionary. Because a woman in her fullness is a force of nature. She doesn't need to manipulate or prove. She doesn't need to overextend or perform. Her love is clean, her energy is rare, and her standards, they're the gatekeepers of her magic. The most beautiful part is that none of this is beyond your reach. These aren't qualities reserved for the lucky few. These are habits. They are practiced, chosen, built day by day. They live in your morning routines, your thoughts, your responses, your solitude, your joy. Every time you pause to breathe instead of react. Every time you express a boundary with grace. Every time you light a candle and sit with your own thoughts instead of filling the silence. You're becoming her. You're stepping into the version of yourself that doesn't wait for attraction to happen, because she is the attraction. And when a man meets that kind of woman, he knows. He may not be able to explain it, but he feels it. He feels the calm in your confidence, the pull in your passion, the safety in your strength. You're not just someone to date. You're someone to grow with, to build with, to rise with. Because when you become magnetically attractive from the inside out, you don't just change your love life, you change the standard for everything. This is your invitation, not just to attract someone, but to become someone. Someone who glows differently. Someone who leads with warmth, not worry, with boundaries, not barriers, with softness, not submission. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be more the version of you that no longer shrinks to fit in, but expands to fill the space she was always meant to own. That's the woman who changes rooms, who changes hearts, who doesn't beg for love, because she is love in motion. And that kind of woman, she doesn't chase, she attracts always.